Chapter 312, Consecutive Successes. Chapter 312, Consecutive Successes. Since he now knew that this sculpture was a fake, it was naturally impossible for Ling Han to still place a bid for it. Moreover, he only had about 100,000 origin crystals, which he still had to save to bid for the blue-scale demonic fruit. He took this chance to pay a visit to Long Yongchang and the others to discuss the matter of a loan. After seeing the formidable wealth of the Cloaked Woman and the Flower Blossom Tier Elder, he really did not think that 100,000 origin crystals was in any way a huge sum of money. When they heard the reason why Ling Han needed the blue-scale demonic fruit, the three big bosses of alchemy all gladly agreed to lend their origin crystals to Ling Han. Of all virtues, filial piety was the most important, and they only made a request in exchange, and that was that they wanted to observe when Ling Han concocted the Restore Spirit pill. That was an Earth-grade mid-level alchemical pill. Ling Han naturally did not mind, so he agreed very easily. The deal was thus made, to everyone's delight and satisfaction. The sculpture gained popularity from a large group of people. Even Gu Fenghua and Qi Hualan made their respective bids for it. There were also some others who should be disciples of the various great clans of the North region, which increased the bidding price drastically. In the end, it was purchased by a man called Su Wentong. At first, the bidders were anonymous, but these visitors from the North region seemed to be very familiar with one another. When they placed a bid, they would not forget to either threaten or challenge their rivals. As a result, many had their identities exposed. This Su Wentong came from the Heaven Origin Sect and seemed to have quite the reputation among the young generation. Consecutively, another spirit tool appeared. This was a saber, and there were 9 hoops on the saber's blade. Upon closer examination, they were not real hoops, but rather intricate patterns, though they looked very much like hoops from their appearance. 9-hoop Heaven Hero Blade. The auctioneer began to introduce the auction item. This saber is a level 5 spirit tool, but its merit lies in the fact that these 9 hoops are the seals of this spirit tool. One can unseal them one by one, and unseal what is equivalent to only a level 3 spirit tool. Moreover, with every subsequent hoop unsealed, the power of this spirit tool would become slightly stronger and eventually reach level 5. When they heard these words, everyone exclaimed in surprise. In the first place, a level 5 spirit tool was extraordinary, and the power it possessed was enough to oppose a spiritual pedestal tier warrior. But the problem was, how could the martial intent of a spiritual pedestal tier elite be activated by one who was merely in the spiritual ocean tier or the gushing spring tier? As a result, if a high-level spirit tool was in the hands of a martial artist at a lower cultivation level, it would not even be able to display power that corresponded to the martial artist's lower cultivation level. But this spirit tool was a different case. Its power would be slowly unsealed and released in distributed segments, which meant that this spirit tool, in the hands of a gushing spring tier, spiritual ocean tier, or spiritual pedestal tier martial artist would still be able to display its greatest ability. This was really too powerful. The starting price is 5,000, the auctioneer announced. Instantly, the sounds of bids were heard throughout, but soon enough, the martial artists from the desolate north were out of the race. Even if they pooled all their origin crystals together, they did not have much remaining. After all, they had just been ruthlessly looted by Ling Han previously, who had earned a total sum of 100,000 from them. Yet Gu Fenghua and the others began to compete. Each of them placed their bids calmly. A mere dozen thousand origin crystals was not enough for them to consider seriously. Ling Han swept his eyes over and saw Kenyi look both envious and disappointed. He could not help but laugh, and called out loudly, 100,000. Instantly, a complete silence descended. The price now had only just reached 70,000, and you all of a sudden came up with the bid of 100,000. That was absolutely going against the rules. How could anyone increase the bid like that? Meanwhile, Kenyi looked at Ling Han with gratitude. He was naturally aware that Ling Han was a sword user, then the reason why he had joined the bidding for this treasured saber could only be because Ling Han wanted to let him have it. Kenyi was not very good at expressing himself, so he could only express his gratitude and thanks through his gaze. "Oh no, Our little Yi would only be able to pledge himself in marriage in exchange, Guang Yuan said wonderingly. Shua, Lu Yutong, and Li Xichan both struck at the same time, delivering a slash towards Guang Yuan. Sword Chi danced, and Guang Yuan hurriedly leaped away from his original position. The wooden chair he had been sitting in was instantly rent into pieces by the barrage of sword Chi. Pa! He managed to escape Lu Yutong and Li Xichan's strikes, but he forgot there was one other person who knew. The little girl delivered a sharp kick to his behind. She was too fast. Guang Yuan was unable to put up his defenses in time. Instantly, the kick landed solidly on his behind, and he crashed into a wall from the resulting impact. He turned around and saw Hu Nyo was currently baring her eerily sharp little white teeth at him. He could not help but feel his heart tremble because Hu Nyo was too tiny, and the places that her eyes passed over made him shudder with fear. Don't shoot your mouth off, both Lu Yutong and Li Xichan said in rebuke. Guang Yuan's face twitched. He naturally did not take these two big girls seriously at all, but he could not possibly guard against Hu Nyo. Moreover, she was getting more and more powerful every day, and had no comprehension of any kind of rules. Sneak attacks were common for her, so she was definitely a little Maleficent star. There was no way that he wanted to offend her. He had only focused on teasing Kan Yi, and had no idea that he had offended Lu Yutong and the other two girls. He was really asking for trouble. Ling Han merely laughed loudly. Meanwhile, after a short period of shock downstairs, the bidding had begun once again, and gradually, the price had reached the huge sum of 150,000. Though that was still very far from the bidding price for the alchemy furnace previously, but now that those two super rich people had left, this sum had just about reached everyone's limit. 200,000. Ling Han once again raised the bid. He already had enough confidence to successfully get hold of this spirit tool, as well as the blue-scale demonic fruit that was coming up later, together with the origin crystals from Long Yongchang and the others. There should be no problem at all. Once this call of 200,000 was heard, the surroundings fell into a complete silence instantly. Why does this voice sound a bit familiar? Gu Fenghua said to himself. What pervert is that? He's so rich. I need to befriend and cling to him. Though this guy was only speaking to himself, his voice was not low at all, so a large number of people heard him clearly. Ling Han placed his hand on his forehead. He really did not want to be friends with this pervert at all at this moment. Thankfully, this 9-hoop saber eventually fell into Ling Han's possession. With his status, he could completely first collect his goods, then pay the origin crystals owed within a few days. The status of an Earth-grade alchemist was still extremely useful. After another few small items had been placed on auction, the auction was nearing its end as well. It was finally the turn of the blue-scale demonic fruit to be on stage, and this indeed gave rise to another climax. The starting price is 10,000. The auctioneer babbled a bit before finally starting the bidding. 11,000. 12,000. The sounds of bidding rose one after another. Ling Han, meanwhile, sat calmly, making no movements. Now was not yet the time to make a bid, and the price was still far from the final price of the blue-scale demonic fruit. Thus, there was absolutely no need to rush things. However, when the price had reached 50,000, the bidding slowed down a bit. After all, the wealth of the alchemists here was mostly in the form of gold and silver. They were only able to produce so many origin crystals through pooling the finances of a considerable number of them. 60,000. The young martial artists from the North region also began to make their bids. They were the real competitors for the higher-priced auction items today. The young people of the 9 nations of the desolate North would only buy some small toys, but in the competition for the real treasures, they were absolutely unable to compete with the martial artists from the North region. The price very quickly spiked up to 150,000 and had once again reached the limit for the martial artists of the North region. 200,000. Ling Han gave the final word. Fuck, why is it him again? This voice sounds quite young. Where did he get so many origin crystals? Don't you guys know? He's Ling Han, Grandmaster Ling, an Earth-grade alchemist that has just broken through. No way, he's the one. I heard he's only 17 years old. This is practically a joke. Hee hee. Don't you guys know that Grandmaster Ling excels both in martial arts and alchemy? Previously, he had even killed a spiritual ocean-tier martial artist named Bao Xian Ran at the martial arts tea party. Hiss, at this moment, the young people of the North region all looked astonished. Chapter 313. Help me eradicate the Winter Moon Sect. Chapter 313. Help me eradicate the Winter Moon Sect. In the eyes of the martial artists from the North region, the 9 nations of the desolate North were the most backward area of the whole land. They didn't even have real elites of the flower blossom tier. Only with the support of the power of the nation did they somehow forcibly possess such powerful existences. Below the flower blossom tier, all were considered powerless mortals. In such a remote and desolate place, the residents were naturally all country bumpkins and boors in their eyes. Yet now there actually appeared a 17-year-old Grandmaster Alchemist here. Moreover, this person was actually capable of killing Bao Xian Ran. Though Bao Xian Ran could not be considered a truly strong person among the younger generation of the North region, he should not have been someone that could be killed by a country bumpkin from the desolate North, either. Moreover, this country bumpkin was only 17 years old, and had also reached Earth grade in terms of alchemy. Did such a genius really exist in this world? Ha 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 ha, so this is Grandmaster Ling. I shall go and see him tomorrow, and ask Grandmaster Ling for some guidance. Someone immediately spoke up. I too shall shamelessly pay a visit to Grandmaster Ling. So shall I. The young people of the North region exclaimed respectively. Without bothering to ask for Ling Han's agreement, they declared their intentions to themselves. Since even the last precious auction item had found its owner, everyone naturally left the venue. Anyhow, there were many valuable and precious treasures in this world, and this was only an ordinary auction. No one would be too depressed due to not having been able to obtain whatever item they had had their eye on. After Ling Han had gotten hold of the blue-scale demonic fruit and the 9-hoop heaven hero blade, he settled the tab with the origin crystals he had gathered. As for the debt that he owed Long Yongchang and the others, he'd just have to slowly pay it back. Anyways, he still had a large amount of 100-year ginsengs and Ganoderma. He could just sell these off to Gu Fenghua and the others. They had no shortage of money. Initially, he had been a bit displeased by the way they talked to themselves and decided so arbitrarily that they would pay him a visit on the morrow. However, now that these people had become his clients, his attitude naturally took a change as well. He was glad to play around with them as long as he could settle his debt first. According to Long Yongchang, his proof of identity as an Earth-grade alchemist would also be coming within these few days, and it was already quite near to his time of departure. Ling Han tossed the 9-hoop heaven hero blade to Kanyi, and after he returned to the inn, he entered into the Black Tower and began to dig out ginsengs and Ganoderma. Actually, there were still a lot of other spirit herbs, but for non-alchemists, ginseng and Ganoderma were still the best. Simply eating them whole would be the best nutrition. On the second day, Gu Fenghua and the others indeed came over. Grandmaster Ling, I really had never imagined that you would actually be this young. Every person that came would say something along these lines, so much that Ling Han felt as if his ears were going to become callous just from hearing so much of the same thing. Ha ha ha, Ling Han, you are indeed a pervert, and have some of the bearing that I used to have years ago. Gu Fenghua's voice was heard. When he entered, he hugged Ling Han enthusiastically, but then he immediately neared Ling Han's ear and whispered, However, Fairy Chi is mine, and if you dare to snatch her, be cautious that I will pour itchy powder in your underpants and make you have to scratch your D*** every day. This guy released him, his expression still very cordial and warm. Ling Han threw a disdainful glance at him and said, You pay more attention to your lover than your friends. This is called, look out for yourself, or heaven and earth will combine to destroy you. For the sake of my happiness, I can only sacrifice you, Gu Fenghua declared without any reservations. Brother Ling. Chi Hualan arrived gracefully and raised her clasped hands in Ling Han's direction. I have not yet repaid you for saving me within the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, and had not thought that you have already become an Earth-grade alchemist. Hualan really does not know whether there will come a day when I can still repay you. Of course there will. Gu Fenghua interrupted. He and I are good friends. What is his is mine, and what is mine is still mine. So you can pledge yourself and marry me, which is equivalent to having repaid the favor you owe Ling Han." Chi Hualan acted as if she had not heard anything and smiled beautifully at Ling Han, then said, "Brother Ling, would you be interested to be a guest at the Purple Star Sect?" She was a disciple of the Purple Star Sect. If she actually managed to pull Ling Han into her sect, the value of this credit would be indescribable, and the sect would spare no expense to help Ling Han ascend to the Flower Blossom tier. Together with the use of spiritual medicines to help extend his lifespan, it would be no issue for Ling Han to live for another 400 years. That was a whole 400 years. If he continued to concoct Earth-grade alchemical pills, how many more Flower Blossom tier elites would appear in the Purple Star Sect? It could be claimed that a high-grade alchemist could completely change the destiny of a sect. Yo, isn't little sister Chi always known for being incorruptible? Why are you now using a honey trap? Amongst a bout of light laughter, a graceful girl came over, her movements flirtatious. She had a lithe figure which was extremely shapely. Her protruding, full breasts could make anyone's mouth water. How could anyone have such a fantastic figure? Her lips were red like fire, and her hair was like a waterfall over her shoulders. This was an extremely beautiful woman. Moreover, she was filled with a fiery bearing, like a fresh flower that was blooming furiously, tempting others to come forward and attempt to pluck her, and not care even if they would be wounded by her thorns as a result. "Lin Xiang Qin," Chi Hualan said softly. This fiery beauty was Lin Xiang Qin. She lowered into a bow in Ling Han's direction. Her head lowered slightly, revealing a small section of her jade-like nape. It was fair and delicate like silk and akin to jade, extraordinarily beautiful. She was really a master at using her own advantages. She had obviously not made any particularly explicit movements, yet it was enough to make one fully experience her graceful bearing and induce an itch as well as irresistible desire in one's heart. Utmost Imperial Sect's Lin Xiang Qin hereby pays respects to Grandmaster Ling. She did not immediately stand back up and seemed to be waiting for Ling Han to come forward and help her up. She believed that there would be no man would be willing to pass up such an opportunity, would they? Around them, Gu Fenghua, Su Wentong, and the others all looked captivated. In terms of looks, it was difficult to decide who was superior between her and Chi Hualan, but if one were to talk about bearing and grace, she was much more superior to Chi Hualan. Of course, there would definitely be many men who preferred the pure type like Chi Hualan. Though Lin Xiang Qin was only 20 years old, her fiery grace was already filled with the style of a seductive elder sister. Chi Hualan was straightforward in her speech. She instantly gave a humph and declared, "Vixen." Yet Ling Han did not stretch out his hands to help her up. He had already seen many attempts to tempt him with beauty in his last life. At that time, he had reached the peak of both alchemy and martial arts at the same time, and the beauties that were willing to throw themselves into his arms had even higher status. There was no lack of even fairies that were in the deity transformation tier. Lin Xiang Qin invited a snub and could not help but be surprised. However, Ling Han had already turned around and walked off, so she could only stand back up on her own. She rubbed her nose and a defiant expression appeared on her face. Lu Yutong and Li Sichuan exchanged a smile. Their Ling Han was not a shallow person. To get his attention, the mere temptation of beauty would not work. Only sincerity would be able to earn his trust. "Grandmaster Ling, would you like to come and look around Utmost Imperial Sect with me?" Lin Xiang Qin immediately caught up to him and asked delicately, not wanting to admit defeat. "All right, as long as you agree to one condition of mine," Ling Han said calmly. Hearing such words, everyone could not help but look slightly disdainful. He had put up an act for so long, but in the end, he was only a lecher. But who asked this perverted lecher to be an Earth-grade alchemist, especially one with a boundless future ahead of him? It was indeed possible that he was worthy of such an extreme beauty like Lin Xiang Qin. Lin Xiang Qin smirked coldly in her heart, and her despise for Ling Han rose. However, the smile on her face was unchanged, and she asked daintily, "May I know what condition that Grandmaster Ling has?" Help me eradicate the Winter Moon Sect. Chapter 314, Selling Ginseng and Discussing about Heroes. Chapter 314, Selling Ginseng and Discussing about Heroes. Help me eradicate the Winter Moon Sect. When these words were spoken, everyone fell silent in fear. What kind of existence was the Winter Moon Sect? Though there were many parties that could be claimed sects in the North region, there were only 5 great sects that were publicly acknowledged as the strongest and were collectively known as the 5 sects of the North region. The Winter Moon Sect was one of these 5 sections. Though the Utmost Imperial Sect and Heaven Origin Sect were both very awesome, in terms of absolute power, none of them could compare to the Winter Moon Sect. Perhaps only if the 3 of them combined their forces would they be able to stand on an equal footing with the Winter Moon Sect. They would at least require 3 times the ability of the Winter Moon Sect to be able to defeat a sect that used a defensive strategy and possessed a mountain protection great array like the latter. In other words, it would require at least 10 such parties like the Utmost Imperial Sect to work together to make this possible. Furthermore, in this process, even if the battle was won, a heavy price would be paid. For the sake of an Earth-grade alchemist, what party would be willing to do such a thing? Ho ho ho, Grandmaster Ling is a real joker. Everyone laughed dryly. All of a sudden, their arrogance was gone and they had become well-behaved, because no matter how wild they were, they would not dare to say such words like eradicate the Winter Moon Sect. Whether they were sincere words from the heart or a mere joke. Ling Han was uncaring. The enmity between him and Feng Yin was something that everyone in the Rain Country knew about, and a little investigation would make it known. Thus, no matter how ferocious his words, everyone would only think that it was because of Feng Yin, but would not know that this enmity also involved the previous generation. If someone ordinary said such words, even if the Winter Moon Sect did not make a move personally, there would still be a large number of other parties planning to kill Ling Han in order to curry favor with the Winter Moon Sect. However, this here was an Earth-grade alchemist and had status akin to someone in the Flower Blossom tier. So how could any ordinary party dare to make a move? Even for such a powerful party like the Winter Moon Sect, they would still have to worry a bit about the alchemist society behind Ling Han. At the very most, they would only beat up Ling Han so that he would not dare to speak so thoughtlessly. Yet they would definitely not dare to kill Ling Han publicly. Of course, it was a different story whatever they did covertly. One word was enough to subdue these extremely arrogant young geniuses. As Ling Han continued to ask about the present situation in the North region, he had Zhu Wujiu take out another basket of ginseng and ganoderma. These young people had no shortage of money. It was apparent from the fact that they were able to toss out 100,000 origin crystals so easily during the auction. Indeed, even if these geniuses came from large sects and had seen and eaten 100-year-old ginsengs and ganoderma before, when they saw such a large bundle of nutritious tonics filling a basket as if they were mere bok choy, they felt the corners of their mouths twitch violently. AI, compared to Grandmaster Ling, we are indeed frogs at the bottom of a well. There are so many 100-year-old ginsengs and ganoderma. Grandmaster Ling must have gotten hold of an ancient herb garden. It couldn't possibly be an ancient herb garden. All the medicinal herbs here are 100 years old. That's true. Most likely, there was a party that had sowed a large number of ginseng and ganoderma 100 years ago, but for an unknown reason, it was destroyed. However, their herb garden was not destroyed. Instead, the plants grew well and were discovered by Grandmaster Ling eventually. Everyone was rueful. This really was luck. Moreover, with the status of an Earth-grade alchemist as support, who would be willing to fall out with Ling Han over just a bit of 100-year-old ginseng and ganoderma? Ling Han could earn as much money as he liked without worrying that he would be targeted. After all, to the large parties, this was definitely only a minor expense. Zhu Wujiu was in charge of collecting money, whereas Ling Han chatted casually with them and scouted out the situation in the North region. After all, what was mentioned in the books was at least from over 10 years, or even tens of years ago. There was no change in the power structure of the North region. The strongest were still 5 parties that were collectively known as One Valley and 4 sects: the Blood Flame Valley, the Winter Moon Sect, the Shinra Sect, the Beast Emperor Sect, and the Half Moon Sect. The Blood Flame Valley was the only party that did not name themselves as a sect, but they were recognized as the most powerful existence in the North region. According to rumors, it was possible that a super elite of the deity transformation tier could arise within their ranks, and they would really dominate and sweep away all others in the North region then. Though the world had 4 regions and 1 prefecture, it was not easy to come and go from one to another. Each had a moat that separated them from the other areas, and it was rumored that this was left behind from a great battle in ancient times. The higher one's ability, the more difficult it would be to cross this gulf. It was precisely because of this that though the North region only had spiritual infant tier elites on standby, they still did not have to worry about being invaded by the elites from the other regions. If we're talking about geniuses of the younger generation, we should definitely mention Zhuyu Da of the Blood Flame Valley. He's only 23 years old, but has already broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Su Wentong said, his expression envious. In the Heaven Origin sect, he was also one of the strongest of the younger generation, yet was only at the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at present. He was still very far from the peak of the spiritual ocean tier, not to mention breaking through to the spiritual pedestal tier. This step was unbearably difficult. The higher one's cultivation level, the more difficult it would be to break through to the next tier. There was previously a genius who broke through to the Flower Blossom tier at 32 years old and became the youngest Flower Blossom tier elite in history. Yet he spent 122 years to break through to the spiritual infant tier from the Flower Blossom tier. In the end, he died when he was in the spiritual infant tier and didn't even manage to break through to the deity transformation tier, invoking sighs from everyone. He's even more of a pervert than I am, Gu Fenghua mumbled to himself from one side. Zhuyu Da, Ling Han murmured as he took note of this name. A 22-year-old spiritual pedestal tier elite was indeed shocking. As far as he was aware, even the Sword Emperor and the Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had not been so awesome at the beginning. He surmised that it had to be because the environment had changed, which had made it easier for the people of today to cultivate. There's also a freak in the Beast Emperor sect called Lu Yang, 24 years old, and similarly in the spiritual pedestal tier. Furthermore, the Beast Emperor sect has a culture of rearing demonic beasts as pets. The combined forces of one person and a beast would mean a further upgrade to battle prowess. Lin Xiangqin too mentioned another genius. There is no particularly bright new star in the Shinra sect, on the other hand. However, they have a set of triplets. Though they are still in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, when the 3 of them join forces, they are capable of killing off an opponent in the early stage of the spiritual pedestal tier, so they shouldn't be underestimated either, Qi Hualan said. Among the young geniuses of the Half-Moon sect, there is a girl who is rumored to be as beautiful as a flower. Even Zhuyu Di fell in love with her at first sight. He had his master make an offer of marriage, yet was coldly refused, Su Wentong said with a laugh. I heard about that too. That girl's name is Zhu Xian. She is only 22 years old but has similarly broken through to the spiritual pedestal tier, which is really something admirable. Lin Xiangqin nodded. She felt an endless envy. They were both women, but why did the other exceed her by such a large margin? Not only that, her beauty is also incredibly shocking. I have seen her lift a corner of her veil to take a sip of water. Though only a bit of her chin was revealed, it was enough to make me infatuated and want nothing more but to die for her sake, someone added, an obsessed expression on his face. Those who had never seen Zhu Xian before were astonished. She was able to make a young genius infatuated to such an extent that Zhu Xian really possessed a lot of charm, didn't she? Moreover, she had not even shown her face, and only a glimpse of her chin was enough to make someone so captivated. Inconceivable. I heard it as well. According to rumors, a genius from the Middle State came over here for training and accidentally encountered Zhu Xian. On the spot, he thought she was a celestial maiden, and even went to the Half-Moon sect to ask for her hand in marriage, saying that he wanted to take Zhu Xian back to the Middle State. Just guess, which party of the Middle State did that young genius come from? Another said, seeming like a bit of a show-off. Without waiting for the others to guess, he directly revealed the answer to the riddle. The Heaven's Sword Sect. Chapter 315. You have a lot of hope. Chapter 315. You have a lot of hope. Dark Angel _ Heaven's Sword Sect. It was as if these 3 words possessed a magic of their own, filling the young men and women here with a sense of deep respect. They all wore expressions of endless yearning on their faces. Close to 10,000 years ago, a great calamity happened in our world, and it was the seniors and leaders of such ultra-powerful parties like the Heaven's Sword Sect, the Absolute Saber Sect, and the Cloud Phoenix Sect that fought a furious battle which finally brought an end to the great calamity and led to the many generations of peace we have now. Furthermore, the Heaven's Sword Sect has an ultra-elite of the Shattering Void tier among their ranks, so they're practically a living masterpiece of martial arts. If it was me, needless to say, I would immediately eagerly race over. Haha, if you cut off what you have between your legs and do something extreme to your face, you will have a good chance. Get lost. Everyone broke out into raucous laughter, yet they all had an indescribable yearning for the Heaven's Sword Sect. This was a real holy land of martial arts and possessed an immortal inheritance. Perhaps one day there would appear an ultimate existence who could successfully shatter the void and enter into the ranks of gods. So in the end, did Zhu Xian'er go to the middle state? Lu Yutong could not help but ask, filled with curiosity. No, the person who had heard the gossip said. It's said that Zhu Xian'er is extremely filial. Her master went mad a few years ago when cultivating, and she has sworn that she would definitely help her master recover. Whoever manages to do so, she'll give them no matter how many resources for cultivation they desire, or even marry him. However, according to the words of an amazing healer, only a heaven-grade alchemical pill can heal that kind of injury to a person's Tao. As a result, our fairy here ultimately did not choose to go to the middle state, and who knows which bastard she would ultimately end up with. When he spoke the last few words, he was already gritting his teeth, as if he could already see the goddess of his dreams being embraced by some damn man. His heart ached at the thought. Shua, all of a sudden, everyone's eyes fixed upon Ling Han. What are you all looking at me like that for? Ling Han asked very innocently. If anyone in the North region is capable of becoming a heaven-grade alchemist, that would definitely be you. Gu Fenghua laughed loudly. You're such a pervert that it is only a matter of time for you to become a heaven-grade alchemist. At that time, you'd be able to carry the beauty home. Let's have a chat. Can you give me one of Fairy Zhu's underpants? Pong, 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 pong. Without waiting for Ling Han to speak, the pervert had already been surrounded by more than 10 people who admired Zhu Xian'er and instantly beaten, so much that he didn't even look human anymore. Yes, that's Fairy Zhu we're talking about here, Lu Yutong said with a very jealous air. Hong. Li Si-chan was the same as well. Only Hu Niu was completely uncaring and thought inside her head, Ling Han is Niu's. A bunch of silly big girls. Ling Han merely smiled calmly. In his last life, what kind of beauty had he not seen? Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden was even acclaimed as the most beautiful woman in history, and he was still unmoved. Only, when she asked him to concoct an alchemical pill for her, he had Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden tell him her real name. And he had no idea what was the woman's problem. It was as if asking her for her name was like killing her, and afterwards, she would frequently come visit, and without saying much, she would simply take alchemical pills from him as she liked. It was as if she thought herself his master. If he wanted to stop her and battled her, that was merely asking for torture. The reason why Ling Han had so wanted to break through to the Shattering Void tier was because he had had enough of being bullied by Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden and wanted to turn the tables and become the boss. And the result was great. Not too long after, he was killed by the Black Tower. If Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden had entered the realm of gods, she would probably be beautiful enough to make one flustered, wouldn't she? All of a sudden, he was a bit nostalgic about Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, as well as Sword Emperor and also Setting Sun Saber Emperor. Had these guys actually died long ago? Or had they broken through to the realm of gods? Theoretically, since even Jiang Fei you had possibly entered the ranks of gods, there should be even less of a problem for these guys. Thinking so much that you're entranced? Lu Yutong was jealous and could not help but pinch Ling Han's waist. Yet when she saw that Li Si-chan had pinched the other side of Ling Han's face in a very well-coordinated movement, she could not help but let out a laugh. Yet Ling Han asked, "Then what about the Winter Moon Sect? Do they have any particularly shocking geniuses?" In the case of the Winter Moon Sect, the 7 sons of the Ao clan should be the strongest, Lin Xiangqin said after some consideration. Ao Feng's 7th son? Ling Han asked. No, Ao Feng has 7 sons that are all geniuses, and are collectively known as the 7 sons of the Ao clan, Su Wentong explained. These 7 people are all at the peak of the spiritual ocean tier, and every single one of them could very possibly break through to the spiritual pedestal tier at any time. A dragon had 9 sons, and indeed, each one was different. Ao Yangming was only in the element gathering tier, but his brothers were already about to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier. Perhaps there were some that were even more pitiful and still stuck in the body refining tier. Ling Han rubbed his chin and asked, "Who are these 7 people?" Gu Fenghua shook his head and said, "Ao Feng has too many illegitimate children. Who could remember all of them? Those 7 are the most outstanding of the bunch, and are thus separately named as Ao Eldest, Ao Second, Ao Third, all the way to Ao Seventh." Ling Han felt a cold sweat gather on his body. He had too many children. Outsiders couldn't even clearly remember their names anymore. If he crippled these 7 people, Ao Feng would probably be heartbroken, wouldn't he? When he remembered the pain that Ling Dongxing had suffered, Ling Han could not help but gnash his teeth with hatred. Ao Feng definitely had to be left as the last one to be killed, so as to allow him to have a taste of the kind of agony that bored into one's heart before he died. His idea was very successful, and he managed to sell off a large amount of 100-year-old ginsengs and Ganoderma, which helped him earn a crazy sum of close to 400,000 origin crystals. One had to understand, even with so many people from the 9 nations of the desolate north, they had only managed to spend just over 100,000 origin crystals, but there were only more than 10 people here. Yet they had managed to buy close to 400,000 origin crystals worth of ginsengs and Ganoderma, which proved how wealthy these people from the north region were. If one was to compare himself to another, he'd just die from ire. Everyone chatted with one another, updating each other on their present situation, and soon left afterwards. Ling Han too made a trip to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, and paid off the origin crystals that he had borrowed from Long Yongchang and the others. He had initially thought that if there was not enough, he'd use the 7 turns break crisis pill to cover the remaining amount, but did not think that the people of the North region would be so impressive. After Cheng Fei Jun had disappeared for 2 days, it had finally attracted the attention of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall, and they sent out people to search for this young Grandmaster Alchemist. But how could they possibly find him? In the beginning, there were some who suspected that his disappearance was connected to Ling Han, but it was soon clearly found out that Cheng Fei Jun had been called out by Luo Jifeng's scholar boy. Yet now, not only Cheng Fei Jun had disappeared, even Luo Jifeng and his scholar boy had vanished as well. Thus, it was naturally not related to Ling Han. Ling Han decided to add fuel to the fire and reveal the fact that Luo Jifeng was a disciple of the Thousand Corpse Sect, which would make the world vigilant against this evil sect. The Thousand Corpse Sect could even do something like destroying the desolate north, so it was not impossible that they would think of destroying the whole northern region, or even the whole world. He had Guangyuan, Zhu Wujiao, and the others spread out the rumors. As long as they carelessly mentioned a word about it at places like tea houses and inns, this kind of rumor would definitely quickly spread throughout the world as if it had grown wings. Indeed, it was only a few days, and the gossip about the Thousand Corpse Sect had spread throughout the small town about how terrifying this party was, and about how they planned to turn the whole world into a corpse land. In the process of spreading gossip, the rumor would only be added upon, and thus, the Thousand Corpse Sect was described as more and more evil as the gossip continued to spread. They were practically by all. However, Ling Han thought that this was a very good thing. There was indeed a need to increase the sense of vigilance against the Thousand Corpse Sect. This party was really too evil. Chapter 316, Reappearance of the Cloaked Woman. Chapter 316, Reappearance of the Cloaked Woman. Dark Angel _ After another few days, Ling Han had finally obtained his proof of identity as an Earth-grade alchemist. In this way, no matter which angle you looked at it from, he was still an authentic, 100% genuine Earth-grade alchemist. We should set out. Ling Han snapped his fingers and led the others out of the fallen moon gorge, heading towards the Winter Moon Sect. The wide horizons of the North region soon stretched out beautifully in front of them. As there was a high mountain that separated the two areas, the truth was that there was a very clear difference in climate of both areas. The desolate north was very dry and cold, but the north region was very humid and warm. There were large stretches of tall trees growing here that had large, fat leaves. It was nothing like the desolate north, where the majority of greenery was the type with needle-shaped leaves that could withstand extreme cold. However, the spiritual qi here was obviously much denser. The last time I came here, it was 17 years ago, Guang Yuan could not help but say wistfully. In the depths of his eyes, there was a barely noticeable pain and fury. Big brother Guang, the conditions for cultivation here are obviously better than in the rain country. Why had you returned? Lu Yutong asked curiously. Because of Ling Han, she couldn't possibly address Guang Yuan as senior. Guang Yuan sighed and said, "It is too difficult to establish yourself in the North region." He shook his head. It's true that the spiritual qi here is indeed much denser, but without a supply of alchemical pills, what would be the point of merely having dense spiritual qi? There are too many martial artists in the North region. Even spiritual ocean-tier elites can't earn much money unless they are willing to obediently refine origin crystals. But if one were to refine origin crystals, how much time would be left for cultivation? There are too many powerful people here. If one wants a better life, he'd at least have to be in the spiritual pedestal tier. Lu Yutong and the others instantly fell silent. That was the spiritual pedestal tier they were talking about. In the Rain Country, that would be the most powerful parties like the 8 great clans, who would leave behind such a comfortable lifestyle and run off to the North region to start fighting for their own place again. Furthermore, in the Rain Country, the spiritual pedestal tier was considered the farthest one could go on the path of martial arts, and one could not possibly advance a step further. Then what was the point of coming out to the North region? To get a flower blossom tier cultivation technique? That was harder than climbing to the heavens. This kind of cultivation technique would be heavily protected and hidden very well by every party, and they would not easily allow an outstanding immortal power to emerge from any other party. Among the various sects of the North region, the Winter Moon sect was the one closest to the 9 nations of the desolate North. However, though that was the case, once one left the Fallen Moon Gorge, one would still have to journey for about half a month's time to reach the Yulong Mountains, where the Winter Moon sect was located. The Yulong Mountains were a very large mountain range. From north to south, they stretched out for over 10,000 miles, whereas from east to west, they extended for over 2,000 miles. In the North region, they were considered one of the largest mountain ranges. The mountains were a source of various spiritual herbs, and also contained a large number of valuable demonic beasts that had great value as medicinal ingredients. And such a large, valuable mountain range was the private property of the Winter Moon sect. If any martial artist not of their sect dared to enter the mountains and poach or steal the beasts and spiritual herbs within, the only fate would be death once caught. There was no exception. However, the Winter Moon sect had set up protective arrays to defend this large mountain range, so weaker martial artists would have no way to sneak in, anyways. Ling Han concocted a large number of change appearance pills on the way. They were not meant to be swallowed, but rather rubbed on the face. They made it possible to change one's face as one desired, and when the effects of the medicine solidified, one would be able to become a completely different person. However, the change appearance pill could only last for 10 days. Furthermore, one could not wash his face in these 10 days. The effects of the pill would be gone when one comes into contact with water, and very soon, one's real appearance would be revealed. Ling Han planned to enter the Winter Moon sect. Whilst dealing heavy damage, he would steal some spiritual herbs and also probe for news about his mother. In the best-case scenario, he would be able to find the 2 remaining spiritual herbs he needed in the Winter Moon sect and concoct the Restore Spirit pill. Then, he would immediately return to Grey Cloud Town and heal his father's spirit base. After that, he would have Ling Dongxing take alchemical pills like crazy and push up his cultivation level rapidly. Qin Ye's features were very distinct. Guang Yuan was past the acceptable age, and Lu Yutong and Li Xichan would definitely not want to pass 10 days without washing their faces. As for Zhu Wujio, his talent seemed to be a bit poor, so the Winter Moon sect might not take him. Thus, Ling Han decided to leave all of them outside. He would be moving alone. Hunyo was too little. No sect would take such a little girl. Who'd be willing to take care of a little girl? And if Hunyo's cultivation was exposed, that would only create a huge commotion, and by that time, Feng Yin would definitely recognize him. Moreover, since Hunyo was here, how could Ling Han be far away? As a result, the little girl stayed with the rest as well. The carriage rocked and swayed all the way, and just when they were about to reach the Winter Moon sect, they heard sounds of battle coming from a nearby location. Soon after, they saw a woman that was completely hidden under a cloak appear staggeringly in front of their carriage. When she saw the slowly moving carriage, a sliver of delight appeared on her face. She took a great leap and entered the carriage from the back. At this time, Ling Han was currently using the change appearance pill to change his appearance and was dressing himself in front of the mirror. Lu Yutong and the other two girls were naturally in the Black Tower, and when he suddenly saw a stranger appear in front of him, he could not help but be surprised. He was shocked, and the woman was even more shocked. A great alchemist was actually acting coyly in front of the mirror like this. What kind of pervert was this? You seem to have misunderstood, Ling Han said weakly. Quiet, she said fiercely. She stretched out a hand and grabbed onto Ling Han's neck and said, "Cover for me, or I will strangle you to death." Ling Han was unafraid. The moment she made a move, he would be able to instantly enter the Black Tower. For someone who had the divine sense of the heaven tier like him, how could his reflexes be slower than one's in the spiritual pedestal tier? He was only curious. Though there were indeed many women who wore cloaks, together with her voice, he was certain that he had not made a mistake. This was precisely that woman who had participated in the auction at the Fallen Moon Gorge a few days ago. Why was she here? And who had she been fighting with moments ago? Hush! The carriage suddenly stopped. Did you see a cloaked woman pass by? An elderly voice was heard. It was that elder in the flower blossom tier who had competed against the cloaked woman in the bidding at the auction at the Fallen Moon Gorge. The cloaked woman's body gave an obvious tremble, yet she suppressed it by force. The divine sense of the flower blossom tier was too powerful. He would be able to sense if there was the slightest bit of oddness. Ling Han smiled calmly and activated his divine sense to surround the cloaked woman. This was divine sense of the heaven tier. The cloaked woman did not notice it at all, and the same was true for that elder in the flower blossom tier. No. The coachman immediately shook his head. The elder in the flower blossom tier used divine sense to sweep a few times over the two carriages, but did not discover the aura he was familiar with. With a stomp of his foot, he had left with the winds, scaring the coachman so much that he knelt down and kowtowed. Ling Han withdrew his divine sense and asked, "Why was he chasing after you?" "Hung, why do you care about it so much?" the cloaked woman asked coldly. "Is this really a good way to talk with your savior?" Ling Han laughed. "I will repay this favor you've done me." The cloaked woman was still very cold. Ling Han shrugged and said, "I don't even know what you look like or what your name is. Where do you want me to go to find you to repay me?" The cloaked woman was very impatient and said, "When my injuries are healed, I will go and find you. How do I know whether you're simply speaking mere words or not?" Ling Han was unwilling to listen to any excuses. He was interested in both this cloaked woman and that elder in the flower blossom tier. Why had they spent so much money just to buy an alchemy furnace that he had used before? However, at this point in time, while he could not defeat that elder in the flower blossom tier, the cloaked woman was currently heavily injured. This was a rare opportunity. Chapter 317. Chapter 317. Cold Spear Association. Dark Angel _ The cloaked woman gritted her teeth in anger and could not help but say, "I am Wu Fei Yao. You can find me in the Middle State." Ling Han could not help but grin. This woman is so susceptible to provocation. She should not be too old. He continued, "You conceal yourself like this, and you still want me to believe you." Mu Fei Yao stretched out a hand, about to remove her cloak, but then she immediately humphed and said, "I almost fell for your words, you cunning brat." Her eyes turned cold and she continued, "If you continue to provoke me, beware that I will snap your neck. That would depend on whether you have that ability or not." Ling Han suddenly exploded, turned the tables and grabbed onto Mu Fei Yao's neck, holding her against the wall of the carriage. Mu Fei Yao was flabbergasted. She was in the spiritual pedestal tier, and even though she had suffered heavy injuries, resulting in her battle prowess dropping to the level of the spiritual ocean tier, she was still stronger by an unknown number of times than someone in the first layer of the gushing spring tier. Yet now, she was actually subdued by Ling Han in a single move. How could she believe that such a thing was possible? Ling Han was astonishingly powerful, enough to compare to the fifth layer of the spiritual ocean tier. "Which party are you from? Why did you insist on buying that alchemy furnace?" Ling Han asked, spending so many origin crystals just to buy a damaged, useless alchemy furnace. He did not believe that it was because she had money to burn. What more when there were two people fighting over it? "Why do I have to tell a liar like you?" Mu Fei Yao asked defiantly. "Because if you don't tell me, I'm going to smack your behind," Ling Han said calmly. Mu Fei Yao suddenly trembled in fear. She was a pure, untouched girl. If she actually had her behind smacked by a damn man, then what face would she have to continue living? Especially when this man had the same name as the Alchemy Emperor from 10,000 years ago. This was one of their great taboos. However, she was even more unyielding. Her pride did not allow her to surrender. She gritted her teeth and said, "If you dare to commit an outrage, I will spare no expense and kill you at all costs." "Huh." Ling Han was uncaring of her threat. "I've changed my mind now. I'm going to take you to someplace crowded and smack your behind in front of everyone." Mu Fei Yao inhaled sharply and said in a trembling voice, You can't. You can test my limits," Ling Han said calmly. Mu Fei Yao looked into Ling Han's eyes and saw that though his eyes were clear, they were filled with a wild nature. Such a man did not do things with any misgivings or qualms in mind, would definitely follow up on his words and do as he had said. It was definitely not wise to anger such a man. "I am a disciple of the Cold One Spear Association." She conceded slightly. Anyway, this was no secret. Ling Han was instantly startled. The Cold Spear Association? The Cold Spear Association was a little secret that belonged to him and his 4 disciples. They had once thought of forming a party and had even come up with the name the Cold Spear Association. Yet before they had even started officially forming it, Ling Han had already disappeared within the ancient historical site. Could this Cold Spear Association have been formed by his 4 disciples after his death? If that was the case, then it was very reasonable that Mu Fei Yao would bid for an alchemy furnace that he had once used before. But why had that elder of the flower blossom tier also competed for this alchemy furnace? Moreover, these 2 people had even come to blows. What was the reason for that? More likely than not, it had to be because of the alchemy furnace. "Then that old man from before?" Ling Han asked. "He is from the fake Cold Spear Association." Mu Fei Yao's face was instantly filled with rage. "These con men. We must eliminate all of them and not allow them to travel the world under Grandmaster Ling's name." Ling Han was even more astonished. There were actually 2 Cold Spear Associations? Mu Fei Yao thought that he was a fake, and probably he also thought the same about her. As a result, both sides fought vehemently over the alchemy furnace that he had once used. But the problem was that he had already died for 10,000 years, so why were they still so reverent towards him and pay such a heavy price just for an alchemy furnace that he had once used? Could it be that both Cold Spear Associations had been formed by his disciples? Had some kind of conflict arisen amongst them which caused resentment towards each other to rise, so much that they were willing to destroy the other? Just from the fact that they were willing to spare no expense to buy the alchemy furnace he had once used, he knew that these 2 Cold Spear Associations were very reverent towards him. But if that was the case, Why would they hate each other so much? Ling Han felt a headache coming on. What had happened after his death that caused a conflict to rise up among his disciples and resulted in them forming two separate cold water associations that were determined to obliterate the other. However, these two sides were so fiercely opposing one another just because they thought the other side were a fake, cold spear association, wanting nothing more but to destroy the other side. Then, if he confessed to his identity of his last life, he would definitely be thought of as a super conman by both cold spear associations, and they would probably try to crush him into dust. Just looking at Mu Fei Yao, she was definitely mad and could do anything incomprehensible. What qualms would she still have about his status as an Earth-grade alchemist? You can leave. Ling Han tossed Mu Fei Yao out of the carriage without the slightest intention to treat her tenderly just because she was a woman. Mu Fei Yao tumbled heavily onto the ground, her face filled with disbelief. She was actually tossed out by Ling Han just like that? This despicable guy, don't let her encounter him again, or she would definitely make him suffer. With even more questions in his head, Ling Han finally arrived at the Winter Moon Sect. At this time, there were still 2 days left before the Winter Moon Sect would open their doors to recruit disciples. For a large sect like the Winter Moon Sect, their main doors were naturally closed at normal times. One usually left or entered the sect through the side doors. Only when there was a big event, such as paying respects to their ancestors, or if there was an extremely important, esteemed guest visiting, or the disciple recruitment that took place every 5 years, would the main doors be opened. From far away, a pair of humongous stone doors had sealed off the pathway into the mountains, and there were 2 smaller side doors at either side of it. One was for entry, while the other was for exit. There were restless streams of people around, which showed off the prosperity of the Winter Moon Sect. Further up, there were clouds and mist curling around the mountains as if they were dragons. Thought there was a large city near the Winter Moon Sect called Sea Breeze City. It was still some distance away after all. Moreover, the time for the main doors to be opened for disciple recruitment had already neared. So there were many who chose to set up tents at the foot of the mountains to wait for this day to come. After all, this was a rare opportunity that would only come every 5 years. The people here were not just the young people from the desolate north, but also those that came from the whole north region. The Winter Moon Sect was one of the 5 greatest sects of the north region, so if one was able to enter into the sect, that was equivalent to having opened up the door to an incredibly bright future. As a result, it had naturally attracted uncountable numbers of young people with dreams. Looking down from a higher position, that was definitely a wide stretch of black. Everywhere he looked, there were people. Just here, there were at least a few 100,000 people. At first, this number might seem like a lot, but one only had to think about the total number of residents of the North region to know that these few 100,000 was really quite normal. Merely the 9 nations of the desolate North had about 1 billion residents, and the desolate North was only considered a tiny, backward corner of the North region. Ling Han had the others stay behind in the Sea Breeze City, whereas he alone came to the foot of the mountains of the Winter Moon Sect. There were already a lot of rumors about the test that would take place the day after tomorrow. The first was about the prize. Those that managed to get into the top 10 would be richly rewarded, and the prize for the champion was a spirit tool called Thunder Battle Armor. This spirit tool was rumored to have been passed down from ancient times, and in the long passage of history, it had suffered much damage. As a result, its might was no longer as great as it had been eons ago, but it was still an extremely valuable treasure. It's actually the Thunder Battle Armor. Ling Han was extremely astonished. Chapter 318, Thunder Battle Armor. Chapter 318, Thunder Battle Armor. It was nothing too surprising that the Winter Moon Sect was willing to use such a spirit tool as a prize, because the champion of the trials would definitely be heavily developed by the Winter Moon Sect and would later become one of the core members of the sect. Thus, this spirit tool only made a huge circle and ultimately would return to the hands of the Winter Moon Sect. It's actually the Thunder Battle Armor. Ling Han was extremely surprised. This was not the first time he had heard of the Thunder Battle Armor. Long ago in his last life, the Thunder Battle Armor had appeared before, and its owner at that time was the famous Thunder Empress Shuexian, one of the 7 ultimate elites of the heaven tier in his last life. Though Zi Shuexian was only ranked 4th amongst the 7 kings of his last life, the 3 people ranked in front of her were super monsters like Sword Emperor, Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden, and Setting Sun Saber Emperor. Being ranked 4th did not mean that she was weak. On the other hand, aside from Ling Han, the other 6 people were all overwhelmingly powerful. And the reason why Zi Shuexian was so powerful was related to the fact that she was wearing the Thunder Battle Armor. This battle armor not only had shockingly high defense, but could also release the power of thunder, which allowed her to be ranked 4th. He had never thought that at the end of 10,000 years, the Thunder Battle Armor would appear once again, and had actually fallen in the hands of such a small party like the Winter Moon Sect. Could it be that Zi Shuexian had fallen? That couldn't be right either. Even if Zi Shuexian did not manage to shatter the void and become a god, she still had a Blue Thunder sect behind her. That sect was a great sect and was still sturdy even today, as immortal as the Heaven Sword sect and the Absolute Saber sect. How could they have allowed such a priceless treasure to be abandoned outside? No, if this Thunder Battle Armor still had the might that it had previously, then would the Winter Moon sect actually still use it as a prize? Even the most powerful of the Winter Moon sect would covet such a treasure. Perhaps it was too heavily damaged, and so the Blue Thunder sect had given up on it, and none of the powerful elites of Winter Moon sect had any interest in it, simply deciding to use it as a prize. After all, it would still stay in the Winter Moon sect in the end. Never mind, I'll get hold of it first, Ling Han mumbled to himself. He was really interested this time, because even if the Thunder Battle Armor was damaged, this was still a level 9 spirit tool, and was definitely worth him making a move on it. This time, the Winter Moon sect would be recruiting a total of 10,000 disciples, and to squeeze into these 10,000 disciples was not an easy task as the number of young geniuses of the northern region was uncountable. Furthermore, it was even more difficult to become the champion of these 10,000 winners. Moreover, what was worse was the fact that even those disciples of the Winter Moon sect that were under 30 years old could participate in this trial. These people were naturally participating for the prizes. Aside from the prize for the champion, the Thunder Battle Armor, there were still other spirit tools, a few spiritual talismans, and some alchemical pills. Even for the disciples of the Winter Moon sect, they were very attractive prizes. Thankfully, everyone abided by the condition that only those below 30 years old could participate. The content of the trial was extremely simple. Everyone would enter the Yulong Mountains and given a very small plaque. In the subsequent 3 days, what everyone had to do was to snatch each other's plaques. After 3 days, the number of plaques in everyone's possession would be counted, and those who managed to rank among the top 10,000 would be able to enter the Winter Moon sect. And those who ranked among the top 100 would get the opportunity to enter into the second round of the trial, and the top 10 would emerge from this second round. These 10 people would then be able to get an additional prize, and the prize for the champion was the Thunder Battle Armor. Thus, this was a matter of strategy. Just from this place alone, there were a few 100,000 people, and there was still a considerable number in Seabreeze City. There would be no problem for the total number of participants to break through 1 million. This meant that there would definitely be large numbers of people who would be disqualified, but precisely due to this reason, some who were weaker in ability had another kind of value if they sold off their plaques. It was definitely better than working hard for nothing. More importantly, participating in this trial was an extremely dangerous thing. The Winter Moon sect had not said that one was not allowed to wound or even kill another in this trial. Once this information was known, many decided to give up. Since that was the case, why should they not take advantage of the opportunity to earn a small profit, participate in the trial, get a plaque, and after the trial began, immediately hand over their plaque to the buyer, then leave. Thus, those buyers with ability had already begun to take action and privately got in contact with others to discuss the selling price. Hi, this rather tan brother. Ling Han naturally was bothered by quite a considerable number of people. He had already sent off a lot of potential buyers, and this time, there came a rather plump young man who was wearing gold, silver, and jewels all over, as if he was afraid that others did not know that he was wealthy. Ling Han's eyes swept over him. This young man was really quite wealthy. Those gold, Silver and jeweled ornaments were naturally trash in the eyes of a martial artist, but the hairpin he was wearing was made from black lacquer wood. His belt was woven from spotted flower silk and black soar gold silk, and the sword sheath attached at his waist was forged from 8 treasure star iron. These ingredients were all shockingly valuable and required a great amount of origin crystals to obtain. He believed that even for the true disciples of the Winter Moon Sect, it would be a very surprising thing to get even one of these items. What more when so many different treasures belonged to one single person? Ling Han had already changed his appearance to become a rather tanned young man. His face had changed considerably as well and become rather ordinary, so he now belonged to the type that would definitely not be noticed in a crowd. This brother with a plump purse, what is it? Ling Han asked with a grin. The plump young man bared his teeth with a smile which was full of sincerity. He stretched out a hand to pat Ling Han's shoulder and said, "Brother, the trial will begin tomorrow. So do you want to get into the top 10,000? Or even the top 100? What is the use of mere wanting?" Ling Han sighed deliberately. He was a little surprised, since this guy was actually not here to buy off his plaque. "Hee, I have a way, as long as you can afford the price." The plump young man came closer and said in a low voice, "I have a spirit tool that can be used by a gushing spring tier martial artist, and the might of this spirit tool is comparable to the level of the spiritual ocean tier. With this spirit tool in your possession, you need only wait for 3 days, then you'd be able to destroy all in our way. So there would naturally be multiple plaques just waiting for you to pick up." "Oh, let me see," Ling Han said, smiling. Come with me someplace with less people. You can't allow such a treasure to be seen by others," the plump young man said, pretending to be very mysterious. The two of them came to a remote corner. The plump young man drew out a crimson ball and said, "This is called the startling Heaven Thunderbolt Vanishing World, exploding the world extinguishing extensively exploding light sphere. Just look." He shook the ball a few times and tossed it on the ground. Pong! Instantly, a large explosion was caused, and the explosive force was shockingly tremendous. When the dust had settled, the plump young man picked up the ball he had previously thrown onto the ground and said proudly to Ling Han, "How is it? However, this thing can only be used 10 times, so when you take it back, don't use it too carelessly." Ling Han grinned. The plump young man wore a ring, and this was not an ordinary ring, but a spatial spirit tool. When he picked up that ball, he had already stored the ball back into the spatial ring, then drew out another ball from within. It looked the same, but it was a fake. This was a con man. Chapter 319, Lord Bao. Chapter 319, Lord Bao. The plump young man moved extremely fast, and if Ling Han did not still have a sliver of the divine sense of the heaven tier, he would definitely have discovered the trick the young man had played. However, with his sharp eyes, this fake whatever sphere could not have possibly deceived him. Come. Because you look pleasing to my eyes, I'll just ask for 10 origin crystals." The plump young man came closer and extended the ball towards Ling Han. Ling Han received the ball and said, smiling, "How about if I explode you? Then I wouldn't have to pay a single origin crystal. While that would mean one less time I can use this, it is still a rather profitable bargain." The plump young man laughed and said, "My tan brother, you are really a great joker." Ling Han gave a flick of his fingers, and the ball shot quickly towards the skies. The plump young man could not help but follow it with his eyes and raised his head to look at the skies. Ling Han moved to grab the hairpin on his head and said with a smile, "I don't want that whatever sphere. I only want this hairpin on your head." The plump young man was shocked and hurriedly raised his right hand. Wong! Instantly, an intricate pattern of designs on his sleeve lit up, forming a gentle white light which blocked Ling Han's attack. He experienced a slight tremble, and Ling Han could not help but take 2 steps back. He only felt a numbness in his right hand. There actually appeared spiderweb-like cracks on his hand, from which blood was seeping out, forming beads of blood on his hand. But when he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, the wound immediately healed, and he was instantly unscathed again. "Yo, so you're an expert." The plump young man came back to his senses and stretched open his hand to catch the ball that Ling Han had previously thrown. Pa! Unfortunately, he had initially wanted to act cool, so he had not looked up at the skies at all. Who would have guessed that he had estimated wrongly, and the ball heavily dropped onto his head. Io! He quickly stretched out his hands to cover his head, and his cool image was instantly ruined. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Just from the outfit you're dressed in, no ordinary sect would be able to afford to develop you. So why have you come all the way here to trick little kids? I won't deceive you. I'm just strong in appearance, but weak in reality. If it wasn't because I had this outfit as support, when I encounter an expert like you, wouldn't I have the tables turned on me and be robbed? As the saying goes, if one is traveling around the country, one has to do 2 jobs at once and attach equal importance to each." The plump young man chattered endlessly, without the slightest embarrassment from being caught red-handed. "Hee, how should I address you?" Ling Han patted his shoulder. "As the saying goes, if one is traveling outside, you have to depend on friends. My surname is Ma, and my name is Duo Bao. Others call me Lord Bao, but because we've hit it off so well, you can just call me Big Brother Bao," the plump young man declared casually. "I say, little brother Bao, we're considered friends, and as the saying goes, you could stab knives at both sides for a friend. But I don't really need you to pierce yourself with a knife. However, this belt doesn't look bad, so why not just give it to me?" Ling Han said with a smile. Hey! Ma Duo Bao instantly jumped. "You are really greedy. How much have I paid just to get this black jade belt? Furthermore, I am Lord Bao, or Big Brother Bao, not Little Brother Bao. Your surname is Ma, so why don't I call you Bao Ma?" Ling Han patted his shoulder and continued, "This pair of shoes are not too bad either, and from what I can see, our feet are about the same size, so why don't we exchange shoes?" "No way." Ma Duo Bao rolled his eyes. "I say, how can you be even more two-faced than me?" "Don't wrong me, I am very pure," Ling Han replied in a deadpan voice. "Pure your sister." Ma Duo Bao hurriedly ran off, and as he ran, he continued to say, "Don't waste the precious time I have to earn money. I'm going to go and con a few more idiots." Pa. By the time he had said his last words, there was already no sign of him. Ling Han's expression tensed slightly. This young man was very unusual. From head to toe, whatever he wore were all spirit tools, and he himself gave Ling Han the feeling that he couldn't see through the former at all. The current world of martial arts was prospering, and not only were geniuses appearing endlessly like spring bamboo right after a shower, but so monsters and freaks were coming out successively. He did not believe that he was the only one who had noticed that Ma Duo Bao was covered in spirit tools, but this brat was still living smoothly like a fish in water, so he had to have some tricks of his own that even those in the older generation did not make a move against him. A smile curled up the corners of Ling Han's lips. He had now changed his appearance. Even if he entered the Black Tower in public or used the demon birth sword, who would have any idea who he was? Of course, if he could avoid using them, that was best. The most important thing now was to first get hold of the Thunder Battle Armor and create trouble at the Winter Moon Sect while he was at it. Ling Han returned to his original spot and was just planning to rest for a moment when he saw a young man dressed in purple come over. There were more than 10 people following behind him, and he carried himself with such arrogance as if his eyes were growing on his forehead. "Hey, brat, during the trial tomorrow, just join our Zhao alliance and become my underling," the purple-clad young man said, as if he was merely making a statement. "Come and thank our Lord Zhao quickly. Otherwise, for a brat that is going solo like you, that would definitely be delivering yourself up to die." One of his lackeys instantly started flattering. "Brat, do you know how many famous geniuses have appeared this time around? Do you know of the little overlord spear, Yang Chong? He's going to participate tomorrow as well. There's also the Sword of Justice, by Ming, and that's someone who has been praised as being able to split apart a mountain with a single strike." The others added, "If you meet with these people, your only fate would be death. That's why we have gathered in a group. Only if we stay united by Lord Zhao's side would we be able to survive. You don't have to think about the top 100. Even the Winter Moon Sect would be sending their young elites to participate. So it'd be fine as long as we can enter into the top 10,000. After another 5 years, those of us who have still not yet reached 30 years old would naturally be able to participate in the trial next time. And at that time, we can compete for a good ranking. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "Your plans are quite good. However, a bunch of trash united together is still trash. I'm sorry, but I have no plans to work together with trash. That would lower my standing." Insolence! These guys shouted in their anger and were just about to make a move on Ling Han, but were stopped by that purple-clad young man. It is strictly forbidden to make trouble at this moment. Whoever creates trouble will be disqualified, and in serious cases, they would even be killed on the spot. The purple-clad young man rebuked sternly. He turned to look at Ling Han and said with a smirk, "Tan brat, you will submit to pressure only after turning down our request. Hung, make sure we don't meet tomorrow. If I don't rip out all the bones of your body, then my name is not Zhao Ri." A flash of killing intent flickered in Ling Han's eyes as well, and he said calmly, "If you are so desperate to seek your death, I would not mind killing a few pieces of trash. Hung, let's go." Zhao Ri led the others away and headed elsewhere to collect lackeys. There were many people like that who were ensuring their positions with both money and ability. That was because it was not safe enough to simply buy plaques. The trial would last for 3 days, and if they were targeted by a powerful elite and subsequently robbed, then wouldn't that be a complete waste of their money? As a result, those with the slightest bit of intelligence had begun to seek out lackeys. After all, there was strength in numbers, and others would not easily dare to assault them if there were many of them gathered together. Ling Han was all alone by himself, and so was naturally continuously targeted by others who wanted to pull him into their camps. After all, the first layer of the Gushing Spring tier was not considered weak anymore, and among the young generation could be considered quite powerful. Chapter 320, Secretly Intervening. Chapter 320, Secretly Intervening. Reverie _ In order to avoid being frequently harassed, Ling Han planned on going to a place where there were less people. He squeezed through the crowd, and after a few steps, he suddenly stopped and unexpectedly saw Qi Yongyi, Zhao Huan, and other old friends from the Rain Country. There were still many people he didn't know. It should be because of him that the youngsters of Rain Country walked together, warming each other up. It truly was quite the coincidence. Before they met at the small town in the Fallen Moon Gorge, and now here, making Ling Han feel as if he were still in the Imperial City in the Rain Countrywide. He see these people everywhere. Unfortunately, Ling Han didn't attend, or else with his strength, not only would he firmly enter top 100, but also would he have a chance of taking first in the second round's exam, Qi Yongyi said, feeling deeply moved. Yeah, that guy is too freakish. He was obviously at the first layer of the Gushing Spring tier, but his strength was heaven-defying, killing even a warrior in the Spiritual Ocean tier. Zhao Huan nodded. He originally thought extremely highly of himself. Even the third prince wasn't in his eye. She thought that the third prince's cultivation was only slightly higher than his, and that was why the third prince was ranked above him. However, seeing Ling Han attack, he was completely convinced. Not to mention Ling Han, he absolutely couldn't compare with Feng Yin, Yin Tian Zhao, and even Hu Niu would completely overrun him. He already completely abandoned his haughty airs, and after possessing a normal heart, he instead had great gains, already feeling the great door to the Spiritual Ocean tier. Qian Wuyong shook his head as he said, "It can't be helped. Ling Han and the Winter Moon Sect have hatred solved only by death, so how could he possibly come here to find a teacher? Moreover, he's an Earth-grade alchemist. Would he need to walk through these procedures? As his status can even parallel a Sect master's, which large Sect wouldn't want to clasp him in their palms? Sigh, that's thunder battle armor, and it's said to be passed down from the ancient times. There's even a strong art inside that can operate the power of lightning. Unfortunately, if Ling Han doesn't come, none of us here will get it." Qi Yongyi shook his head repeatedly. Yeah, everyone nodded. They already developed some sort of blind faith regarding Ling Han's battle prowess. Ling Han couldn't help but secretly laugh. If he were to take first, and if these people found out later on that it was he, what sort of expressions would they have then? Ha ha ha, truly laughable. A sudden mocking laugh resounded as a youngster wearing a long gray sleeve robe walked over, picking his nose as he said, "Is it my ears that have problems? Or is it that you frogs at the bottom of the well have a leak in your mouths?" Actually saying that someone in the first layer of the gushing spring tier can take first place in this time's exam. What does our conversation have to do with you? Zhao Huan stood forward. He was now the strongest one that walked out of the Rain Country's doors. Thus, encountering this situation, he naturally was unwilling to leave such responsibility to others, standing out first. If you guys spoke the truth, then there naturally wouldn't be a problem. The key is that you guys talk too big, so I just couldn't hold back. The gray-robed youngster shook his head repeatedly. How about you guys call out the guy called Ling Han and let me have a look? Zhao Hongcheng can suppress him with one hand. You want a battle? I'll keep you company, Zhao Huan said without any fear. A mere 9th layer of the gushing spring tier. Zhao Hongcheng sneered and said in disdain, I'm at the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier. You guys do know just how large the difference is between the spiritual ocean tier and the gushing spring tier? Even for a 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, the distance to 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier is separated by a great chasm. I wouldn't want to bully you. Qi Yongyi and the others' expressions stiffened. The higher the martial arts tier, the harder it was to cross tiers to battle, especially a large tier. They weren't so freakish like Ling Han, being able to dominate a spiritual ocean tier warrior while at the 1st layer of the gushing spring. Oh, so you guys come from the desolate north. Zhao Hongcheng clapped his hands abruptly and laughed out loud. No wonder the lack of experience. Turns out you're a bunch of country bumpkins. Sigh. I'm truly bored to have lowered myself to the level of country bumpkins. If anyone were to know, they'd definitely mock me. Whatever. You guys continue to look at the sky from the bottom of the well. Wait till you encounter me tomorrow, hee. I'll kill you guys one by one. As he spoke the last few words, his expression was already full of threat. Qi Yongyi and the others' expressions turned blue with anger, but the contrast in strength was clear, so what if they got more infuriated than ever? Besides, brawling wasn't tolerated at the bottom of the mountain gate of the Winter Moon Sect, and if they dared to attack, they'd only invite humiliation and suffer the Winter Moon Sect's expulsion, having no chance in tomorrow's exam. That would be an even worse loss. Sadly, Ling Han isn't here, or else would this guy dare to be so arrogant? Everyone was deeply resentful. Not to mention Ling Han, Feng Yin or Yin Tianzhao could easily suppress Zhao Hongcheng. Even Hu Niu could do it. How unfortunate. Ling Han heard it all and couldn't help but smile slightly, picking up a few random stones off the ground and curling his fingers to flick them. Ayaya. Zhao Hongcheng stumbled abruptly as his right-left leg went soft, and he couldn't help but half-kneel on the ground. He immediately stood up again and shouted furiously, Who dares to blindside me? Qi Yongyi and the others were momentarily startled, but after they heard Zhao Hongcheng's words, they couldn't help but crack into laughter. Great expert Zhao, aren't you a great expert? So how come you don't know who surprise attacked you? As I see it, this guy just naturally loves to kneel and has weak legs, so he found an excuse. Hee, great expert Zhao, your master's here, come kneel down again. Zhao Hongcheng was so angry that his eyes burned with rage. He turned around fiercely, looking towards Qi Yongyi and the others. Even he didn't believe that amongst those people were an expert that could surprise attack him. He looked toward his surroundings and felt that most of the presences were at the element gathering tier, and only a few practitioners were in the gushing spring tier, much less the spiritual ocean tier was the only one. Could he really just have had a cramp? He turned to try to walk, but as his right leg raised up, he felt a fierce pain in his left leg. He staggered and knelt down again. Pwahahaha. Qi Yongyi and the others guffawed again, but also revealed surprised expressions. Once might have been by chance, but would a spiritual ocean tier have such an accident twice? Then, someone definitely did sneak attack Zhao Hongcheng, and that person had to possess incredible strength to be able to do it while hidden so well. Subject Zhao, you may rise. Everyone naturally wouldn't let go of such a good chance to ridicule him. Zhao Hongcheng stood up and this time he really was hurt somewhat seriously. Once he stood up, he stumbled once again, kneeling straight back down. He lowered his head and revealed an horrified expression. Shockingly, on his knee was a bloody hole, which must have penetrated right through his kneecap. Hiss! If the person wanted to kill him in secret, wouldn't that person's attack be able to easily penetrate through his skull? There were several 100,000 people here, and even the Winter Moon Sect couldn't possibly control everything, right? One hit to kill without witnesses, how would they find the murderer? Besides, he would be dead, so what if he could get revenge? Zhao Hongcheng wasn't stupid, hurriedly stood up on one leg, paid respect towards his surroundings, and said, This junior doesn't know where he has offended you. Please forgive me. No matter what this junior has done or said, he was simply sharp-tongued but without malice. He paused momentarily, and when he saw that there were no movements in the surrounding, he attempted to leave with a crippled leg. And this time, he no longer suffered another attack, finally resting assured. He felt cold sweat all over his body. His clothes were soaked thoroughly, sticking close to his body. Ling Han smiled slightly. He intentionally beat Zhao Hongyong into a cripple, so that, at least tomorrow, Zhao Hongyong wouldn't be able to attend the exam. Thus, Zhao Hongyong naturally wouldn't encounter Qi Yongyi and the others, and neither would he be able to enforce his threat and kill them. Chapter 321. The Examination Begins. Chapter 321. The Examination Begins. Reverie _. One day's time quickly passed, and the Winter Moon Sect's once every 5 years disciple recruitment event finally began. Hong Long Long, the enormous mountain gate, which hasn't been opened for an unknown amount of time, slowly opened. It was so heavy that when it opened, it was as if an earthquake had happened. SESE, small rocks kept falling down from the nearby mountain walls, and the mud on the ground was trembling like a carpet. Everyone's scalps numbed. This was truly too stunning. Just opening the mountain gates could cause such a large commotion. An indescribably dazzling flash of light shot out from within the mountain gates and made everyone close their eyes instinctively, not daring to look. Only after this light gradually went from strong to weak, then gentle did people look over again. At this time, an old man walked through the mountain gates, stepping through the air. With each step a flower blossomed and formed extremely bright lines of fabric one after another, not disappearing for a long time. Flying through the air with one's physical body, the flower blossomed here. Everyone instinctively felt deep veneration. This was an existence beyond mortals, and in normal people's eyes, one just like God. Otherwise, even if mortals could fly, could they have a long lifespan that reached 200 to 300 years? This sect opens its gates, for disciple recruitment has officially begun, the old man said indifferently. His voice was very soft, but traveled to everyone's ears extremely clearly. At the same time, it suppressed the voices of the 100,000s of people here. It was very hard to imagine so many people shutting their mouths altogether. The scene was so quiet that the drop of a needle could be heard, and the truth was so. If a flower blossom tier warrior's presence couldn't suppress 100,000 normal people, then they wouldn't be worthy of being called those who surpassed mortals. The rules you all know, so this old man will speak briefly. Enter the mount gates in sequence and pick up a token, then go into the mountain forest from the side. There is where you will fight. This sect's disciples that are under 30 years old can also attend, but they can only join on the 3rd day. Battle and seize the tokens. This is your priority. You have to get to the northwestern part of Yulong Mountains in 3 days. There is a ravine called Fallen Goose Valley there. When the moon rises to the zenith on the 3rd day, those who haven't reached the Fallen Goose Valley will be disqualified. So, if you think you've gotten enough tokens, then you can head to the Fallen Goose Valley early on. You don't have to wait until the 3 days are over. Depart from here. A total of 26 routes that lead to the Fallen Goose Gorge. You guys can decide on your own which path to take. Since you attend the exam, life and death is your own responsibility. Start. The old man sat cross-legged, suspended in the sky, but his large presence pressed down and made everyone feel as if a stone pressured their hearts, not daring to breath loudly. Everyone walked forward one by one to receive their tokens. Those all alone immediately ran towards the depths of the forest, and those seeking to form a party began to wait here. Very soon, small teams were formed one by one. Ling Han's gaze swept by. He saw several people who stood out. A red-clothed youngster carrying a 6-meter-long spear, emitting an iron-blooded and bloodthirsty aura. His cultivation was of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, quite beyond the norm. Ling Han judged he was Little Overlord Spear Yang Chong, who reached the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at 24 years old. Was out of the ordinary as expected. Guang Yuan used to be at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier and now crossed into the 8th layer, but the two were 20 years old apart. Yang Chong immediately felt Ling Han's gaze and looked back contemptuously. He resumed to take large strides forward, seemingly not to care about Ling Han at all. Yes, this guy needs a good beating, Ling Han thought to himself. He then looked towards a youngster with a sword fastened by the waist. Hearing the discussions of the surrounding people, that was Sword of Justice by Ming. Also at the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, his battle prowess was unfathomable. It was rumored that he'd once slain a bandit at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier with one strike, and his reputation was very widespread. There was also a red-coated girl whose face was like peach blossom, breathtakingly beautiful. A large red flower was fixed on her head, contrasting with her delicate white face such that it was alluringly beautiful. A black whip was tied around her. It outlined her thin waist as if it could be grasped with one hand. It made her lofty bosom appear even grander, and her perky buttocks formed a stunning arc. In the martial arts world, the number of females was evidently less than that of males, and beautiful women were even rarer. Much less, this girl was also at the spiritual ocean tier. Thus, she was like a magnet that attracted countless gazes of people in the surroundings. Men were fervent and women envious. From the discussions of the surrounding people, Ling Han found out this girl was called Si Chi Ming. As for whether she was strong or not, no one knew, as no one has seen her attack. Ling Han temporarily only saw 3 slightly stronger people. There were too many people here, and he had no way of seeing them all. He could only see the few near him. The tide of people was too congested, so after 1 hour, Ling Han finally entered the mountain gates and received a token. He walked slowly into the mountain forest and immediately saw a group of people set their gazes on him. However, the more calm and collected he behaved, the more these people dared not to move rashly. Who knew if he was disguising as a pig to prey on the tiger? Also, the Winter Moon Sect never said one couldn't use spirit tools. On top of that, battle prowess could be completely inestimable. However, even if they didn't attack, that didn't mean that others wouldn't. Hand over the token and get lost. Yang Chong took large strides over and yelled at a small team that guarded here. The other party was waiting for their people and hadn't left. Yang Chong, the exam just started. Why must you have such great temper? Give eye, Miao Taining, face, and let everyone mind their own business. How about it? The team's leader walked out and saluted towards Yang Chong with folded hands. Courting death. Yang Chong sneered, charging out and throwing out 2 palms together. How brazen! Miao Taining yelled furiously and hurriedly called his underlings to meet the fight. However, no matter how many dregs added together, they were still dregs. These people weren't even qualified to force Yang Chong to draw his spear, and instantly, 3 people were smashed into bloody rain by iron fists. Miao Taining was one of them, and this instantly scared the others, who completely lost their fighting spirit, turning to run. All of you stay. Yang Chong leapt out. One punch took care of one, and instantly, this small team was annihilated. He looked towards a passing youngster and said, "You, search out the tokens on their bodies for me." The youngster was scared pale and didn't dare to resist at all, hurriedly finding the tokens on the corpses that were all over the ground and carrying them quiveringly before Yang Chong. Yang Chong took out a bag and put away the tokens, then waved his hands as he said, "Get lost. If I see you again within a day, I won't make things difficult for you." Thank you very much, young Master Yang. The youngster exulted, hurriedly bowing his head to say thanks. Yang Chong paid no heed, shifting his gaze to another small team. His murderous spirit could be felt slightly. Run! The few small teams immediately fled helter-skelter, running into the forest as if they were already dead. Yang Chong revealed an expression of disdain, but as his gaze swept by, he revealed an intense desire for battle and said, "You too, want to battle me?" Bai Ming and Si Qiming had already received their tokens and walked towards the mountain gates. Chapter 322, People with the Same Pursuit. Chapter 322, People with the Same Pursuit. Reverie _ These three strong prodigies all had the cultivation of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. It was quite surprising. Bai Ming showed no sign of weakness and looked towards Yang Chong, and Yang Chong did the same. One reached towards the sword hilt, and the other reached towards the spear, burning with desire for battle almost as if they were going up in flames. But at last, they didn't make a move, only looking at each other deeply before they entered the forest on their own. The exam just started. It was too early to fight. Even if they won, they wouldn't obtain many tokens, and instead they would just reveal their own trump cards. They weren't the only prodigies here. That tan brother. Within the shouting, a fat and round youngster ran over almost as if he was rolling, stopping in front of Ling Han, panting. "You're too unfriendly, not even waiting for Treasure Master." Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You still dare to show up? Aren't you afraid of your shady business being exposed and being chased after by people?" "Pa, where have I lied?" Ma Duobao sneered. "Treasure Master never cheats in his dealings. Don't you ruin Treasure Master's reputation." "Hold it. Do you even have any reputation?" Ling Han shook his head. "Black brother, how about we join hands?" Ma Duobao came closer. "Why?" Ling Han asked. "You're covered with jewels and pearls from head to toe, and you still need to join hands?" If he didn't unleash Demon Birthsword, even he couldn't deal with all of Ma Duobao's spirit tools. "Hee, Black brother, wouldn't you want to do a huge business deal?" Ma Duobao smiled evilly, moved his head closer, and said in a low voice, "Don't tell me that you're not interested in the medicinal garden here." Ling Han was shocked. He said, "You want to steal from the medicinal garden here? Such great nerve." "Hee, we're people with the same pursuit. The second in line doesn't tell off the boss." Ma Duobao cupped his hands in salute to Ling Han and said, "How about it? How about it? Treasure Master is most adept in lifting restrictions. What can you do?" Ling Han scratched his head and said, "From where did you get that I looked like a thief, and how come you're admitting it all on your own?" Ma Duobao laughed out loud and said, all right. Treasure Master's done business for so many years, so the moment you lift your butt, Treasure Master will know what kind of crap you defecate. Like I said, we're people with the same pursuit, yet you try to cover it up. Are you not regarding Treasure Master as a friend?" Ling Han rolled his eyes and said, "We were never friends. Unfamiliar at first, but well accustomed soon enough. Aren't we already friends?" Ma Duobao looked at Ling Han twice more. "This disguise technique of yours is really not bad, even almost deceiving Treasure Master." This time, Ling Han was truly shocked the other party could actually see through his disguise. He activated the Eye of Truth and looked towards Ma Duobao, but Ma Duobao reached out to cover his face. The lines of fabric on his sleeves emitted a faint light, making even Ling Han's Eye of Truth unable to penetrate it. "Wow, what luck you have to actually have gotten the Eye of Truth. Ha. Now Treasure Master has complete certainty. You'll be responsible for using your eye, and Treasure Master will be responsible for using his hands. I promise you that we'll steal the medicinal garden till it's barren," Ma Duobao said excitedly. A coldness arose within Ling Han's heart. This guy could recognize the Eye of Truth with one glance. Was he really just a youngster? If he could disguise himself, why couldn't the other party? However, when they entered the mountain gates, a flower blossom tier cultivator appeared. He might have looked unperturbed, but if a person with makeup surpassing the age limit were hidden in the crowd, he would definitely have found out at once. Young or not could be seen from one's life force. The various functions of the bodies of those past 30 would start going on a downslope, and their life force would appear to be on a downward trend, as long as they didn't enter flower blossom tier, which was completely different from the vigor of youngster. However, If Ma Duobao was an old monster in disguise and could deceive a flower blossom tier practitioner's eyesight, what cultivation was he at? Ling Han thought to himself and said, "All right, then let's join hands." He was very interested in emptying the Winter Moon Sect's medicinal garden. Yulong Mountains were the Winter Moon Sect's private property, and in order to avoid people from sneaking into the mountains to dig up herbs and hunt monsters, the entire mountain range was protected by a mountain-protecting formation. If one tried to break through it with external power, the Winter Moon Sect would definitely be alarmed. However, they already entered the Winter Moon Sect, so they weren't scared of tripping the formation. As long as they had the ability to open up the medicinal garden's restriction, they could easily rob the medicinal garden empty. They looked at each other, both starting to laugh. As they advanced, it was clear Ma Duobao had done the groundwork, staying in front to lead the way and walking in a fixed direction. "Stop there. Hand over you tokens, and I can spare you your lives." However, after they walked for a while, they encountered a small team in ambush. A total of 34 people began to surround them. "You go or I go?" Ling Han said, smiling at Ma Duobao. "Treasure Master is only interested in treasures. Just keep the tokens for yourself." Ma Duobao shrugged. As expected, this guy came especially for the Winter Moon Sect's medicinal garden. Earlier, he probably scammed other people's origin crystals on a whim, and thought that it was dumb not to take advantages when there was a chance. Ling Han looked towards those people and said with a smile, "Now it's a robbery. Get a bit more serious and hand over all of your tokens." Those people were fuming with anger. They were the ones that was doing the robbery, all right? If you must go about it the hard way, brothers, kill him. These people waved their sabers and swords and charged over. Ling Han frowned. If these people were just robbing, then he wouldn't mind robbing back and letting them live. However, these people now bared their killing intent, already harboring the thought to kill. He snorted and tapped the sword's sheath with his left hand. Xiao, the long sword instantly bounced out, seized by his hands, and with a schwa, a dazzling sword light swept across. Pu, 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 fresh blood splattered everywhere. Traces of blood appeared on their right shoulders, which immediately hung limply, the weapons in their hands instantly falling onto the ground as cries were heard one after another. Ma Duobao clapped as he said, "Good job on acting cool. I give you 10 points. Ling Han still didn't kill them in the end, so settled for only crippling their right arms. It wouldn't affect their movements hereafter, but they wouldn't ever be able to use violence. He said indifferently, "Leave your tokens and get lost." These people knew they encountered an expert. With pale faces, they hurriedly placed their tokens together and ran right away without saying a word. Now they were simply injured, and if they still weren't sensible, then they might also lose their lives. They ran backwards one after another. With their arms crippled, what the hell was the point in fighting? Ling Han picked up the tokens and put them away into the Black Tower. In front of Ma Duobao, who was adorned with jewels and pearls, he wouldn't mind revealing his possession of a spatial spirit tool. Ma Duobao definitely wouldn't think of the Black Tower that could form its own world. On the way, they encountered several more robberies. Ling Han normally wouldn't kill, unless the other party had gone too far. For example, if others unleashed a fatal sneak attack, then he wouldn't mind killing the other party with one strike. After half a day, they finally arrived at a large medicine garden. Chapter 323, Robbing the Medicinal Garden. Chapter 323, Robbing the Medicinal Garden. Reverie _ It was not quite a medicinal garden, but rather a large-scale medicinal farm, for there were only a few trees used for timber in the surroundings, wrapped by some cloth, forming a wall that couldn't block anything. However, Ling Han and Ma Duobao both revealed cautious looks. This medicinal garden had a restriction protecting it. It might look slack, but it was not, so it was filled with great danger instead. "Little brother Treasure, why don't you explain how we can sneak in without a stir?" Ling Han said. This medicinal garden was massive, taking up half of the mountaintop, and within it were fields upon fields of spirit medicine, which almost made him drool as he saw them. There certainly were a few high-level spirit medicines, some he hadn't even seen in his previous life. After all, The Winter Moon Sect was a superpower in the North region. It's Treasure Master, older brother Treasure, Ma Duobao emphasized, rubbing his hands together and staring at the medicinal garden. Now, use your eye of truth to find the weakest point of the defense. Treasure Master has a way to open a door that can be maintained for one day. However, we'll definitely have to slip out after one day. That's enough. Ling Han nodded. He activated the Eye of Truth at once and began searching. It could see through the fabricated. Reaching the essence using it to unravel formations was the best option. Wang, flashes of golden lines of fabric were in his eyes, and the world immediately appeared in a different form. This was a world completely made up of the 6 origin source elements: gold, wood, water, fire, earth, and thunder element, which formed the cornerstones of the world from which everything else evolved. The restriction on the medicinal garden completely emerged in front of him, each and every nodal joint without a thread of secret. Unfortunately, this restriction was too strong. If Ling Han were to unravel it now, then he would instantly collapse. However, to find the weakest location was still easy. Very soon, he pointed in a direction and said, "There." The two walked over and Ma Duobao took out 3 spirit talismans while muttering incantations. Wang, Wang, Wang. The 3 talismans immediately shone and he hurriedly pressed into the air, and with a pa, 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 the 3 talismans were as if stuck to a wall, floating in midair. The 3 talismans took 3 corners. Each had 2 flashes of light surging out that connected to the other 2 talismans, forming a triangle. "Let's go." Ma Duobao leapt out and through the triangle, entering into the medicinal garden. This triangle was very small. Normally speaking, it would be impossible to pass through with Ma Duobao's physique, but he contracted his stomach and his large belly actually disappeared all at once, easily passing through. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh as he said, "Little brother Treasure, if you lost weight, you'd have some game." "Pa, this body full of meat is Treasure Master's baby, priceless." Ma Duobao breathed in, and his belly instantly swelled up, returning to its original state. Ling Han also leapt through into the medicinal garden. "Hopefully the spirit talismans won't be taken off, or else we'd be like a turtle in a jar," Ma Duobao muttered. Hey, hey, you only have 3 of those spirit talismans?" Ling Han took a hold of him. "Treasure Master's busy. How could Treasure Master possibly have spirit talismans left?" Ma Duobao said boldly and confidently, which meant that he'd done so many illicit things that he hadn't had the time to replenish such spirit talismans. Ling Han sighed and said, "Aren't you too unreliable? You just found out?" Ma Duobao glared. Hurry up, let's split up and leave when we've scooped up enough. If your greed gets you trapped and captured, then that's not on Treasure Master." "The feeling's mutual." Ling Han smiled. Ma Duobao turned to leave and find high-value spirit medicines to harvest. If they were to rob by cleaning whole areas, it wouldn't take long to startle the Winter Moon Sect, so they could only collect selectively. Ling Han also immediately began to move. There was quite a decent amount of valuable spirit medicines here. After all, this was one of North Region's 5 strongest forces. However, 8-tier and above spirit medicines couldn't possibly be seen. There was definitely a reason for North Region's martial arts level being low. It concerned the environment, which limited high-level spirit medicines growing. Unless there was some special circumstance, like a shattering Void-tier warrior's corpse, which perhaps contained enough fertilizer to breed a stock of 10th-tier medicine. Ling Han selected by genus, digging it up by the roots and sending it into the Black Tower. In any case, 1 year in the Black Tower was equivalent to 1,000 years in the outside world. He would soon be able to turn 1 stalk of a spirit medicine into a dozen stalks, and into 100 stalks. He was collecting awfully happily, but in a short while, he heard a loud sound and felt fierce waves of origin power transmit over, shaking even the spirit medicines here. "Tan brother, time to bolt." He heard Ma Duobao's tragic scream that was as if a pig was being killed. His extremely fat physique appeared immediately after, and behind him was an expressionless old man with the spiritual pedestal tier cultivation. SHT, why'd you bring him over here? Ling Han hurriedly broke into a run as well. Treasure Mazer couldn't possibly know you were here, Ma Duobao said, feeling wronged. But, for better or for worse, you're Treasure Master's brother from now on. No, I'm afraid that I'll be thoroughly deceived by you. Ling Han rejected decisively. This fatty was too devious. Pa, you actually dare to give Treasure Master the cold shoulder. Ma Duobao was extremely displeased. The spiritual pedestal tier at the back was finally angered as he yelled out, two foolishly daring thieves actually daring to steal from this sect's medicinal garden. Submit to arrest swiftly, or else, once you're in this old man's hands, I'll promise to peel your skin and lash your veins. Pa, you think Treasure Master was scared into maturity? Ma Duobao stuck up his butt, slapped it hard, and said, Come catch Treasure Master. Tan brother, this old man's up to you. Treasure Master's got some stuff, so I'll be going first. Shua, his figure accelerated fiercely. It was unknown who said it, but when running for your life, you don't have to be the fastest, as long as you're faster than the ones running along with you. Those words were very true. Now, the spiritual pedestal tier old man was closer and closer, only a few meters from Ling Han. You damned fatso, Ling Han cursed. He hurriedly unleashed his sword, slicing it diagonally. Instantly, a stalk of spirit grass was sliced off, and he threw it with a palm, smashing the spirit medicine at the old man. Old wretch, if you dare get any closer, careful that this master might be out of sorts and everything here could be destroyed, he said with a smile. The old man reached out with his hand and swiped the spirit medicine to the side, immediately revealing an expression of caution and fear of more destruction. He was responsible for guarding the medicinal garden. If he let the place suffer large damage, then even if he caught the two vermin, he would still suffer severe punishment. In any case, these two people's cultivation was so low that even if they ran out of the medicinal garden, he would have the chance to attack without restraint. With that decided, he slowed down his steps and maintained about 30 meters of distance from Ling Han, no longer approaching. Xiao, Xiao, Xiao. The three were like a line, leaping swiftly. The door opened earlier was already in sight, and Ma Duobao was the first to flee through it. However, he didn't leave and waited at the door, reaching out with both hands and waiting for the instant Ling Han fled through. Shua, shua, shua. Both his hands moved repeatedly and instantly ripped off the three spirit talismans. Pung! The spiritual pedestal tier old man rammed right into the restriction, and instantly, a terrifyingly large power rolled by, sending him flying and rolling over everything in his path. Who knew how many flowers and grasses he ruined? Restrain your grief, Ling Han and Ma Duobao said at the same time. Chapter 324, Yellow Dragon Fruit. Chapter 324, Yellow Dragon Fruit. Reverie _ Although the spiritual pedestal tier old man fell heavily, his strength was out of the ordinary after all. He immediately jumped up again, though his body was covered in blood. He instantly ran back to the restriction and stared fiercely at Ling Han and Ma Duobao. You guys won't get away, he yelled, straining his voice. A dignified spiritual pedestal tier cultivator actually let two juniors run from right under his nose. How could he bear to stand this? This wasn't just about losing face, but being an incompetent sentry. The sect's punishment would definitely await him. Pa, Treasure Master will leave how he wants, and leave whenever he wants. Can you deal with me? Ma Duobao turned around and patted his butt at the old man. If you have the ability, come bite Treasure Master's butt. Tan brother, give me a disguise pill quickly. As he turned his head, his expression changed, ingratiating himself with Ling Han. Ling Han laughed with mischief and said, We're brothers, and I can surely give you a disguise pill, but that hairpin on your head is not bad. No. Ma Duobao hurriedly shook his head. That waistband? No. Boots? No. Then goodbye. I wish you luck. Ling Han clapped his hands, about to walk off swaggeringly. Tan brother, you can't just stand by when some is in peril. Ma Duobao hurriedly pulled onto Ling Han and said, clenching his teeth, "Treasure Master's going for broke. I'll sleep with you for 2 days." Pooh! Ling Han instantly spurted out his saliva and hurriedly threw a disguise pill at Ma Duobao, leaping out, "Damned fatty, stay away from me, or else I'll cut off all your fat." Seeing Ling Han disappear in the forest afar, Ma Duobao couldn't help but reveal a deep smile of satisfaction. Interesting, interesting. He picked up the disguise pill, smelled it, looked at it for a while, and involuntarily revealed an astounded expression. This technique is quite experienced. Is it truly something that a 17-year-old youngster can refine? Besides, Treasure Master sees that his soul is somewhat strange. He shrugged his shoulders and walked ahead, leaving the spiritual pedestal-tier old man gnashing his teeth in anger and to no avail. This restriction no doubt made people unable to enter the medicinal garden easily, but at the same time, it made the people inside the medicinal garden unable to leave easily. Ling Han jumped onto a large tree, directly entering the Black Tower. He calmly and collectedly started to renew his disguise, changing into a new pair of clothes. In a short while, he turned into a pale-faced scholar. If he were willing, he could also activate origin power to temporarily change his height, but firstly, it was uncomfortable, and secondly, to maintain it expended origin power, so he went without it. In any case, the Tan brother was also his disguise. He didn't immediately leave the Black Tower and planted the spirit grasses he had just thrown in. In order to save time earlier, he only put the spirit grasses inside. It might not have been a lot of time he spent there, but he still dug up a few dozen spirit medicines, 7 of which were even 5th-tier spirit medicine, the price of which was quite shocking. Unfortunately, there was no time to go to the core area of the medicinal garden, or else he would have earned more. A few dozen spirit medicines could only make the Winter Moon sect feel a bit distressed. After taking care of the spirit medicine, Ling Han came out of the Black Tower. Now that he was done, he was better off getting some tokens, since he had to advance into top 100 to qualify for the next round's exam. Otherwise, how would he get the Thunder Battle Armor? On his way, he encountered quite a few surprise attacks from those who wanted to seize his tokens, but they were utterly beaten up by him, and he was raking in their tokens instead. At this day's nightfall, Ling Han had over 700 tokens. Ding, ding, ding. The sound of weapons clashing came over. With a flash of wit, Ling Han sped up his footsteps. He wouldn't mind collecting some more tokens. Very quickly, 200 people team group battle appeared in front of him. Quite a few people already fell down on the side, blood spilling all over the ground. After a while, the flowers, grasses, and trees should grow to look more luxuriant. Ling Han was astounded. This world was too small. One of the 100-people teams was actually the Rain Country's people. Qi Yongyi, Zhao Huan, and the others were shockingly within it, now battling fiercely, shouting continuously, waving their sabers, sword, spears, and all sorts of weapons, unleashing violent attacks towards their opponents. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh. For a spot to enter the Winter Moon sect, they shed their blood and laid down their life. Was it worth it? The key was that even if they were riddled with scars, they might not even be able to enter the Winter Moon sect successfully. For martial artists, being able to enter North Region's holy land of martial arts meant extremely bright prospects. They could change their entire lives, so why wouldn't they fight desperately? Ling Han shook his head and jumped in, staggering along as if he suffered from the affects of the battle, unable to escape in time. However, as he was flailing around, he could always trip and push away a few people. These people were by coincidence the Rain Country's opponents. Under this disturbance, the opponents were instantly crushed, and not long after, the remaining people threw off all their gear and fled helter-skelter. Everyone was just a motley crowd, temporarily forming a team. Qi Yongyi and the others looked at Ling Han, feeling that this guy was too lucky, staggering into the battle, but instantly changing the battle's outcome. Seeing that he was only in the first layer of the Gushing Spring tier, it was apparent that those were not his intentions. Earlier, could every practitioner at the first layer of the Gushing Spring tier be such an anomaly like Ling Han? This one, what are you called? It was all thanks to you earlier, Zhao said with a smile. He was now the leader of the Rain Country's martial artists. I'm called Hu Yin, Ling Han said. Hu Yin, which obviously meant to talk nonsense. Qi Yongyi and the others actually didn't notice the implicit meaning in those words. Although Ling Han acted thoughtlessly earlier, it nevertheless changed the battle's outcome, making everyone feel extremely grateful. They didn't ask where he was from and treated him with great enthusiasm. After Qi Yongyi and the others looked at each other, Qi Yongyi suddenly asked, "Brother Hu, do you know why we came into conflict with them? Was it not because of tokens?" Ling Han answered with a question. Tokens are only one aspect, but more importantly, both parties found a stalk of 4th-tier spirit medicine called Yellow Dragon Fruit, Zhao Huan said solemnly. Ling Han involuntarily revealed an astounded expression and said, "Yellow Dragon Fruit is a superb spirit medicine that doesn't need to be refined. Directly taking it can strengthen physique and raise the body's potential for martial artists below the spiritual ocean tier. It's a pretty good spirit medicine. No wonder. For this stock of spirit medicine, you guys would fight over it with your lives." He nodded. Yellow Dragon Fruit couldn't directly increase cultivation, but it could change someone's physique from the essence. This was a true spirit medicine. However, Yellow Dragon Fruit was of the 4th tier, so it was useless for martial artists above the spiritual ocean tier. The improvement on physique could be considered trifling. Ling Han's body received improvement from the roots of 2 godly medicine, and his physique had already reached a shocking level, far surpassing the spiritual ocean tier's limit. Therefore, Yellow Dragon Fruit's effects on him was pitifully little. Seeing that Ling Han was only slightly astounded and didn't reveal the look of greed, Qi Yongyi and the others were astonished. When they found the Yellow Dragon Fruit, everyone's eyes had gone red with desire. However, a beast guards the Yellow Dragon Fruit, and we didn't have time to lay our hands on it before encountering the enemy and starting to fight, Zhao Huan said. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Are you guys inviting me to fight against that beast?" Chapter 325, Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf. Chapter 325, Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf. Reverie _ Zhao Huan shook his head repeatedly and said, "That's a spiritual ocean tier beast, so we have absolutely no chance of beating it. My thoughts are that we branch out 5 people and attack from different directions to lure this beast from its lair. Once the beast has left, the remaining people will immediately dig up the Yellow Dragon Fruit by the roots, and that beast will definitely not chase too far out. After it returns from its chase, we'll all escape unscathed." Quite a great plan. Ling Han wasn't so set on having the Yellow Dragon Fruit, but considering that Qi Yongyi was an old friend, he was rather willing to lend a hand. Moreover, he didn't need the Yellow Dragon Fruit, but he could give it to Lu Yutong, Li Sichong, Qin Yi, and the others. Hu Niu had also eaten the root of a godly medicine, and although it was only one root, the transformation was very amazing. The Yellow Dragon Fruit couldn't possibly have any effect anymore. Besides, the Yellow Dragon Fruit was very practical in that it could be refined into a Restore Spirit pill to compact the tiers of martial artists below the spiritual ocean tier. Let's first go check out the situation. Ling Han didn't immediately make a decision. Yes. Everyone nodded. They departed, and on the way, Ling Han said, "This Yellow Dragon Fruit is in Yulong Mountains, so how come it hasn't been taken by the Winter Moon Sect?" Hee, that place is too remote. Everyone laughed. That made sense. Although the entire Yulong Mountains were the Winter Moon Sect's private property, the mountains were so large that the Winter Moon Sect could in reality only grasp a small area of them. The depths of the mountains were still primitive areas beasts ruled over, and it was said they were extremely terrifying existences in the spiritual infant tier. Thus, even the Winter Moon Sect would order its disciples not to trespass the Yulong Mountains' depths, but if one wanted to get rich, one had to go there as high-level spirit medicine could be found in those places. There was even rare gold that could be forged into a divine weapon. Risk always accompanied opportunities. This was obviously not the depths of the Yulong Mountains, but there were still places the Winter Moon Sect's disciples overlooked. It certainly was so. As Qi Yongyi and the rest leapt through the path which was completely not something normal people could walk through, being extremely rugged, they arrived at a precipice, only to see a strange beast lying there and snoring loudly in its sleep. This beast was a meter long, shaped like a dog, and its entire body was scarlet. However, there was a horn on its head and a circle of eyes on its face, forming a half-circle counting. There were exactly 9 eyes. Beside it grew a stalk of plant that was half a man's height, bearing rings of dense fruits, each no larger than a peanut. The amount was certainly something to be surprised about. Ling Han's gaze swept by, but he gasped in surprise. This was a 9-eyed beast wolf. It wasn't a normal beast, but a king amongst beasts. This 9-eyed beast was unquestionably in the spiritual ocean tier, but as a king, its battle prowess couldn't be rivaled by normal spiritual ocean tier beasts. Ling Han immediately knew why this 9-eyed beast hadn't eaten the yellow dragon fruits. It just advanced into the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Presumably, this beast was waiting until it was at the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. It would eat the yellow dragon fruit, then rising into spiritual pedestal tier at one go. A chance like improving one's physique was certainly better the later one's tier was, just like Black Tower's power boost. For beasts, it was so as well. If it absorbed the medicinal power before it broke through, matched with the drastic change inside its body, then it would definitely have an effect that was greater than 1 + 1 = 2. Beasts were quite intelligent to begin with, and had inborn abilities inherited by blood. Although they didn't know how to refine pills, they surpassed humans in using spirit medicine because they always ate it raw. I'm afraid you guys will be disappointed. Ling Han shook his head, pointed at the 9-eyed beast wolf, and said, "This is a 9-eyed beast wolf. It has cultivation in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and is a king amongst beasts." With that said, everyone was stunned. A king. For humans, forming 3 flashes of chi would be a minor achievement, 6 flashes would be a major achievement, and above 7 flashes would make one be counted as a king. In other words, this beast was equivalent to a warrior in the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier that had formed 7 flashes of chi. What could they even do? There couldn't possibly lure it away, as it could kill off-handedly with an attack from extremely far away. Fortunately, they immediately encountered another team. Otherwise, if they acted rashly, the team would already be annihilated. "So what do we do? Just give up?" someone said, unwilling to resign. That was a yellow dragon fruit, which could improve one's physique after it was taken, changing people from their essence. Ling Han laughed and said, "There's a change in plans. Leave the mission of luring away the 9-eyed beast wolf up to me. You guys only need to harvest the medicine." His gaze was burning. A beast with a king's bloodline, with such great tonic-like meat to replenish his chi and blood, he should be able to cultivate the gushing spring tier to perfection and charge into the spiritual ocean tier. No. Qi Yongyi and the others immediately shook their heads, but some people nodded unceasingly. Since Ling Han was willing to play the hero, why not go ahead with it? Anyways, they didn't have any friendly relations with Ling Han. "That's the plan," Ling Han said. It wasn't that he wanted to be the hero, but to fight a king like the 9-eyed beast wolf, he had to unleash his trump card, so he obviously had to act alone. Without waiting to see whether people agree or not, Ling Han already charged out, holding a long sword in his hand. Under the surge of origin power, Shua, he used his longsword as a concealed weapon, throwing it towards the 9-eyed beast wolf. Z. Before the longsword reached, the beast wolf already stood up. A flash of lightning shot out from one of its eyes, shattering the longsword. It growled deeply at Ling Han, but didn't rise up to chase. Obviously, its intelligence wasn't low, and it didn't fall for the trap. Ling Han smiled faintly. Another sword appeared in his Honda, threw it once again at the 9-eyed beast wolf. The space inside the Black Tower was nearly infinite anyways, and the metal swords weren't valuable. He prepared at least several thousand. Z. Another lightning formed from its eye, shattering the flying sword. Ling Han didn't care, and just kept throwing. Shio, shio, shio. Flying swords shot at the beast altogether. Ong. The great king of beasts was at last finally enraged, diving towards Ling Han. "Dumb dog, come catch me." Ling Han broke into a run and carried out shadow wind movement technique. He was like a gust of wind, sweeping towards the distance. Although the nine-eyed beast wolf had high intelligence, it was a beast after all. Its natural disposition was violent, as it unhesitantly carried out its chase. One man and one wolf immediately disappeared into the distance. Quickly harvest the yellow dragon fruit, everyone hurriedly said. Zhao Huan watched Ling Han's silhouette from behind that had already disappeared and said, "Don't you guys feel that this person seems like someone?" "What, you think so too?" Qian Wu Yong immediately said.
Yes.
Qi Yongyi, Bai Li Tengyun, and the others nodded successively. It's not time to talk about this. The yellow dragon fruit's already in hand. Let's retreat. They hurriedly turned around, retreating to where they promised to meet Ling Han. No need to wait. Being targeted by the nine-eyed beast wolf, he's definitely dead. That's right. Hurry up and divide the yellow dragon fruit. Some people immediately began to shout out. You guys have no shame. He risked his life to lure away the nine-eyed beast, and you guys say this. Do you guys still have any humanity? In that moment, everyone was somewhat silent. Hee, well said. Have you guys any shame? A party of 7 suddenly appeared. Chapter 326, Fighting a King of Beasts Head-On. Chapter 326, Fighting a King of Beasts Head-On. Reverie _ Who are you? Zhao Huan immediately asked in a raised voice. Who are we? Those 7 people laughed aloud and raised to reveal their hands. Are you guys blind? Can't even recognize the sect you're joining? You're Winter Moon Sect's disciples. Everyone came to a sudden realization. Didn't they say that you guys could only enter the test on the 3rd day? How come you guys are here now? Qian Wu Yong asked. You guys care about too many things, one of Winter Moon Sect's disciples said. That yellow dragon fruit belongs to this sect, and we're responsible for guarding it. You guys immediately hand it over, and we won't fuss over it. Bullsh. Bai Li Tingyun, young and aggressive, immediately lost it. That was clearly a beast guarding it. So what does it have to do with you guys? I know. You guys definitely saw it coincidentally and pretended to wait for us to retrieve the spirit medicine, jumping out to get it. Pa. That Winter Moon Sect disciple began to applaud and laughed. Haha, exactly as you said. But so what if you guys know? I, Zhan Ming, am at the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and you guys added together won't even rival me. On the side, another disciple suggested, Senior Brother Zhan, the yellow dragon fruit is of great importance, so we should kill them in case the information gets leaked. Zhan Yuan pondered and said, might as well, or else it wouldn't be good after all if people knew we attended the test today. Kill all of them. Zhao Huan immediately drew his sword and said, Wu Yong, Ziyin, Feng Yu, you guys fight this spiritual ocean tier guy with me. The rest of them are all at the gushing spring tier. We still have some hope. Okay. Everyone drew their weapons. The yellow dragon fruit was too important, and none of them wanted to give it up. Zhan Yuan sneered and said, a bunch of good-for-nothings that know not of their own limitations. The battle immediately began, and fresh blood was splattered violently again. Ling Han leapt swiftly. Behind him, that beast was also getting closer and closer. The beast didn't know of any movement techniques, but some agility-type beasts were naturally shockingly fast, comparable to martial artists of the same tier using a top-grade movement technique of the same. It was as if a sort of art flowed through their blood, and they absolutely didn't need to activate it as it came out naturally along with their instincts. Similarly, when the beast shot lightning from its eyes, this would be counted as an art in case of a martial artist, but for beasts, it was used in passing. Thus, beasts would never back down when they encountered martial artists of the same tier, and at the level of kings, beasts were extremely terrifying as they could annihilate everything of the same cultivation. Even if Ling Han used the high-level black grade art, shadow wind movement technique, he was still getting caught up step by step by the nine-eye beast wolf. A fierce electric arc shot swiftly from its eyes towards Ling Han. How fast was lightning? Ling Han had only enough time to parry with his sword, and with his Z, He felt his right hand go numb as the entire sword turned into a puddle of metallic water. His perlicue was even split open, fresh blood gushing out. Shit. He now had rock cliff body, and his defensive abilities were superb, yet he was injured by this attack. A king-level beast, and its cultivation was whole lot higher than his. He might have been a bit reckless in wanting to kill it. However, this beast was at the king's level, and could be used as a stepping stone to solidify his last cornerstone for breaking into the spiritual ocean tier. No matter what, I have to try. I have Black Tower anyways, I can still hide if I can't beat it, Ling Han thought shamelessly, but he only had a slight chance. He would definitely not give up even if he would end up riddled with scars. He would never lose the spirit to adventure because of the Black Tower. It would only make him even more daring. Z. The nine-eyed beast wolf shot another electric arc over. Ling Han was too lazy to waste another sword, so he threw a punch whilst activating the indestructible heaven scroll. A faint golden light flowed on his hand, and Hong, the lightning arrived. Ling Han let out a smothered groan as his right fist was heavily injured again. Shit, although I'm in the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, I have long since fused the 9 spring eyes, and it's a 5 elements origin nucleus. Such power can definitely parallel a normal 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, even the 5th layer. But this large dog is only at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so how come its attacks are so fierce? Were it not for my cultivation of indestructible heaven scroll, maybe my whole arm would have exploded upon receiving one move. Ling Han thought to himself while activating indestructible heaven scroll. His left hand very quickly returned to how it was before. Indestructible heaven scroll wasn't so obvious in improving his defense, at least at the rock cliff tier. The powerful part was on the recovery. However, it would be different upon advancing into the diamond tier. When that time came, his physique would be like an indestructible diamond, and his body would be almost undying. Z. The nine-eyed beast wolf discharged its lightning again. You done yet? Ling Han stopped running and turned around. It was secluded enough here, and he was disguised, so even if other people found out some small secrets, it wouldn't matter. Demon Birth Sword was unleashed and went head-on with the electric arc. Pa! The electric arc hit and a bright field of light exploded, forming a dazzling white ball that could blind the human eye. Ling Han revealed a faint smile. 10th tier spirit tools were kick-ass as expected even if it wasn't fully resuscitated. The properties of it alone broke up the electric arc. It was expected. If it let the electric arc infiltrate his body, then Demon Birth Sword would be too useless. Wong Wong, on the sword's body, 2 vein-like patterns lit up. This spirit tool was already recovering to a limited degree. The nine-eyed beast wolf immediately revealed vigilance in its eyes. It was a king amongst beasts, being extremely sensitive to the presence of danger. However, it was quickly at ease, because the presence Demon Birth Sword gave off was dangerous but not powerful, making it fearless. Ong! This beast wolf immediately pounced, waving its right claw, which had 10 vein-like patterns lit up at the same time. Wong, 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 martial intent vibrated, forming a terrifying pressure. However, this was useless against Ling Han. A threat of heaven tier level divine sense was enough for him to be immune to the majority of the pressure. He raised the sword and launched 4 seasons sword technique head-on against the beast wolf. 4 types of concepts revolved together, instantly showing the changes of the 4 seasons and making people feel the lapse and transition of time. Pooh! As the beast wolf's claws came down, the sword light was instantly shattered. The claw sent Ling Han flying and the clothes on his left shoulder were torn open, leaving a deep wound. Blood instantly gushed out, and the beast wolf's claw was also slit open, fresh blood gushing everywhere. Demon Birth Sword was a 10th tier spirit tool. After all, even if it wasn't resuscitated, its sharpness had not changed at all. My beast wolf blood! Ling Han cried out regretfully. A beast king's was treasure from head to toe, especially its blood and bone marrow, which were greatly tonic and much stronger compared to 100-year ginseng. Nine-eyed beast wolf's eyes instinctively revealed a threatened look. Those as strong as the spiritual ocean tier had already attained wisdom, but they still maintained the bloodlust of beasts. It could understand Ling Han's words, which extremely infuriated it. He actually cried out dearly for it. So he already took it as his food? Chapter 327. Both releasing ultimate moves. Chapter 327. Both releasing ultimate moves. Reverie _ The nine-eyed beast wolf couldn't tolerate that a mere gushing spring tear human dared to covet its body. Die! It pounced again, waving its claws towards Ling Han. Ling Han didn't dare to receive it head-on. He instead kept shifting his figure, activating the indestructible heaven scroll to heal his wounds. One in the spiritual ocean tier could manifest their martial intent, so if he was hit, the opponent's martial intent would also enter through the wound, slowing down the recovery and even entering the consciousness, destroying the spirit. The nine-eyed beast wolf was a king, and its martial intent was even stronger. Ling Han immediately felt it extremely insufferable, as if infinite vicious wolves were biting him. With the indestructible heaven scroll already activated, the nine-eyed beast wolf's martial intent instantly melted immaculately, as if a mantle of snow met boiling water. Ling Han couldn't help but reveal a smile. This was because the indestructible heaven scroll's level was too high, and thus, once it was activated, it could wipe away nine-eyed beast wolf's martial intent. This was the suppression of a higher level. It certainly was a lost art that even he took 10 millennia to learn, its power solid. Puppy, obediently become my rations. Ling Han laughed loudly and waved his sword as he moved, but without a few hits he was sent flying by the nine-eyed beast wolf. He bled non-stop, but since the demon birth sword was extremely sharp, the nine-eyed beast wolf would also bleed even from a mere graze. Theoretically, the damage they sustained was completely on different levels, and Ling Han would definitely be the one to die of serious injuries as time went on. However, he had the indestructible heaven scroll at hand, and his wounds could immediately heal. Furthermore, the demon birth sword was a 10th tier weapon and had martial intent. Even if it wasn't resuscitated, so it could still threaten a spiritual ocean tier beast. Thus, the nine-eyed beast wolf would continue to bleed, although not by much. The longer the time, the more serious a damage would bleeding inflict. Ling Han aimed precisely for this. He waved the demon birth sword as he took out a ginseng and, without any caution, just munched on it like a carrot. If someone were to see it, they'd definitely scold him for squandering fortune. This was 100-year-old ginseng. How could he waste it like that? Ling Han didn't care at all. For others, this was 100-year-old ginseng, but for him, it was truly no different from a carrot. There were plenty inside the Black Tower. Besides, it was a few days since he departed from the fallen moon gorge, and these ginsengs were 10 years older with even better effects. Ginseng was a great tonic, so he was alright with its support despite the profuse bleeding, or rather, he was at least a lot better off than the nine-eyed beast wolf. As they fought, the nine-eyed beast wolf obviously realized this, and instantly went berserk. Its attacks became even fiercer, seeking to kill Ling Han in one hit. Haha, although you are a king, I'm not too shabby either. Ling Han activated the demon birth sword and 7 flashes of sword chi flew across, showcasing that he was also a king amongst humans. However, there was still a large tiers difference between them after all. The nine-eyed beast wolf completely had the upper hand, and Ling Han could only parry its attacks. Sigh, I've been smacked in the face. Ling Han mocked himself, but no one would laugh at Ling Han for this, only admiring him greatly. The nine-eyed beast wolf was a king amongst beasts, and on top of a large tier's advantage, it should have absolutely dominated him. The results were completely inconceivable. Ling Han knew his own limitations. It wasn't that he was strong enough, but that he possessed the indestructible heaven scroll, giving him the ability to tangle with it. Otherwise, he would have already been annihilated by the nine-eyed beast wolf. How could an art that needed 10 millennia to comprehend not be strong? He also possessed the demon birth sword, and a large amount of 100-year-old ginsengs, which gave him enough confidence. Without either of these conditions met, perhaps he would be able to protect himself, but he would be incapable of harming the nine-eyed beast wolf. He still hadn't used the mysterious 3000, because he wasn't certain if this attack could annihilate the nine-eyed beast wolf. If this beast wolf suffered a great loss, it would definitely retreat, and with its speed, Ling Han couldn't catch up. Thus, he definitely had to wait for the most opportune time to unleash the mysterious 3000. After a long battle, Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf finally revealed a hint of weariness, and viciousness flashed by its eyes as all of its hairs all stood up. Its 9 eyes shot out lightning at the same time. It's unleashing its ultimate move. Ling Han immediately looked stern. 9 flashes of lightning struck at the same time from different directions, blocking all of his escape routes. Moreover, he could at most block 2 flashes of lightning. This was an ultimate move unleashed by a spiritual ocean tier beast king, so how could it be easy to block? Can't block it, I can only dodge. Waiting for the moment the lightning hit his body, Ling Han entered the Black Tower, and then immediately came out. Entering and exiting so fast that it was almost unperceivable, the lightning had already surged past him. He smiled faintly. Although he had an unfair advantage, he didn't want to be electrified tinder on the inside and crispy on the outside. Besides, there was a great gap between his and the nine-eyed beast wolf's cultivations. Fighting head-on was unfair to him. The nine-eyed beast wolf's eyes showed its confusion. How did this human dodge its ultimate move? It should have been absolutely impossible. It accurately calculated Ling Han's speed and ability to wield a sword, so it should never have happened. If it could open its mouth to speak, then it would definitely have already asked by now. Little wolf dog, you definitely wouldn't know, so just submit obediently without putting up a fight. Ling Han laughed loudly. The Black Tower was his true trump card. The nine-eyed beast wolf's hairs stood up again. Pa, 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 pa. 9 flashes of lightning struck violently again. Ling Han played the same old trick, entering and exiting the tower, avoiding the beast wolf's ultimate move easily. He revealed an exultant expression, as an ultimate move like this used frequently would be a heavy burden for the nine-eyed beast wolf. The time when he could unleash the mysterious 3000 to end the battle was also getting closer. However, as a king, the nine-eyed beast wolf naturally wasn't stupid. Seeing that its ultimate move was useless, it no longer used it. Instead, it continued to tangle with Ling Han. As the fight went on, its aggressive attitude weakened not because its body couldn't hand it, but because it lost patience. As a beast, it was violent, bloodthirsty, and proud, but at the same time, it lacked patience. Under a drawn-out battle, it still couldn't take down its prey, and its injuries were also not light. It made it finally conceive the thought of retreating. Ling Han couldn't help but frown. He could obviously tell that, so he had to clench his teeth and unleash his ultimate move, or else this beast king would really run away. The mysterious 3000. He kept waiting to unleash it after having accumulated enough power, so the ultimate move was unleashed as soon as he thought of it. 800 sword lights fired out without reservation, yet didn't turn into black-armored warriors like last time. Apparently, Ling Han needed to cross into the spiritual ocean tier. Such miraculous effect might have only been produced under Black Tower's power boost, needing Ling Han to cross into the spiritual pedestal tier to display that move's power again. Even so, 800 sword lights were still extremely terrifying, covering the sky and the sun, with only 5 colored sword lights shining down upon the world. The nine-eyed beast wolf revealed intense fear. This sword technique's power was too strong, making even it feel anxiety, but at this moment, it could only receive it head-on. Chapter 328, Analysis. Chapter 328, Analysis. Reverie _ Sword light filled the whole sky. This ultimate move's power far surpassed Ling Han's tier. Even a king like the nine-eyed beast wolf didn't dare to be careless. All of its hair stood up as flashes of lightning shot out at the same time from its 9 eyes, combining into one and forming a thick electric arc that fired towards Ling Han. To catch bandits, catch the ringleader. If Ling Han was annihilated, then this move's power would naturally disperse on its own. The lightning was also Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf's ultimate move. Shio, Shio. Sword lights decreased in size, greeting the lightning. Pa, pa, pa. The sword lights were annihilated one after another, but at the same time, the lightning shrunk at a rapid pace. Each sword light was equivalent to Ling Han's full-strength attack, and although it wasn't enough to battle Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf's full-strength attack head-on, there were still many sword lights. With each sword light striking it, the lightning finally became as thin as a spider's thread, completely disappearing at last. At this time, only 300 sword lights remained. Hong. The Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf had already fired its ultimate move, so it couldn't possibly follow up with another one. It could only use its claws to guard its head. 300 sword lights struck, and the fierce clashes instantly produced flashes of blinding light. Ling Han slumped onto the ground. He truly gave it his all with the strike just now, directly drawing out all the origin power inside his body. If this couldn't kill the Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf, then he could only hide inside the Black Tower, wait for his origin power to recover, and then find this Beast King again. Fortunately, the Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf lay on the ground with fresh blood gushing out continuously. Its chest was slightly moving up and down, signaling that it was still alive. Kakasset received the mysterious 3000 head-on and was only heavily injured. Ling Han was deeply moved, but an intense fear arose in him toward the Heaven's Sword Sect. Just what sort of force was it for it to possess such a terrifying ultimate move? Too shocking. Even with his Heaven-tier experience, it was still very hard to use this sword art. Moreover, this sword art's power was linked to sword chi, and not everyone could cultivate it to such a terrifying degree. Previously, when Ling Han pushed out 700 sword lights, he already guessed that the mysterious 3000's extreme should be at sword chi's consummation. Theoretically, a martial artist could cultivate to form 10 flashes of sword chi, but there were still geniuses that cultivated 11 or 12 flashes. So, if one flash of sword chi could evolve into 100 sword lights, then theoretically, one could cultivate 29 flashes of sword chi, making up the 3000. The first form was sword chi, so sword ray should initiate the second form. Sword ray was sword chi extrapolating in this way. The third form breaking limits could only be used when one grasped sword heart. The third form corresponded to 3 different stages in Way of the Sword. That the Heaven's Sword Sect could stand erect for 10 millennia without collapsing was expectedly not without reason. Senior Brother Ginseng, the battle ahead suddenly stopped. Could they have battled it out? A voice drifted over from afar. Hee, battling so fiercely, we must go see just who it is. Another voice sounded. T. Ling Han hurriedly collected his thoughts and struggled to climb up. He only expended all his origin power. His physical stamina was still preserved. He walked staggeringly to the side of the Nine-Eyed Beast Wolf, picked it up, and with a thought, Shio, he entered the Black Tower. In an instant later, 2 figures arrived immediately at the same time. It was 2 youngsters, only 24 or 25 years old, both looking handsome, confident, and out of this world. As for their cultivation, one was at the 7th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier, and the other was shockingly at the 9th layer of the Spiritual Ocean tier. Huh, how come there's no sign of anyone? The purple-clothed youngster said. The other youngster that wore a blue garment lowered his gaze, looking at the traces left from the battle, and said, the battle just now was not between 2 people, but between a person and a beast. Senior Brother Ginseng, how so? The purple-clothed person asked. The blue garment youngster let out a smothered laugh and said, there are claw marks everywhere. Can't Junior Brother you tell? The purple-clothed person laughed too, and refuted, couldn't it possibly be one person who used a claw-type weapon? It's certainly possible. The youngster in the blue garment nodded. He then pointed to the ground and said, however, there are still several footprints here, enough to prove that one side was a beast. Couldn't it be possible that 2 people battled, and one brought their pet beast? The purple-clothed person seemed to like nitpicking. The youngster in the blue garment laughed and said, the footprints that belong to a human look exactly the same. Don't you tell me that the 2 people were wearing the exact same shoes and their sizes are exactly the same. Under this rebuke, the purple-clothed person paused, then muttered, Could it not be possible? This seemed to be his favorite expression. From the traces of destruction, the battle prowess of the person and the beast were quite astonishing. The youngster in the blue garment no longer spoke sarcastically to his companion and looked at the battle traces seriously. He revealed a stern expression and said, "This battle prowess is at least 9 stars. 9 stars? The purple-clothed person was slightly shocked and said, "Senior Brother Ginseng, not to mention the people in the current exam, there aren't many spiritual ocean tier practitioners that possess 9-star battle prowess even in our Wintermoon sect." The youngster in blue garment nodded and said, "There certainly aren't many, but not too few either, at least several hundred. Who exactly was it that came here to battle with a beast? Huh, this blood." He revealed a shocked expression. There were large amounts of blood left by the 9-eyed beast wolf, which the traces had glowing crimson-colored lines of fabric in them. As the blood itself was red, if one didn't examine them closely, one would really overlook it. He thought of a possibility and cried out abruptly, "The 9-eyed beast wolf." What? The purple-clothed person also revealed a shocked expression. "I certainly heard that there was a 9-eyed beast wolf roaming around here, but the spiritual pedestal tier experts have searched for it, and even flower blossom tiers swept over with their awareness, but they all found nothing at all. It should be it. This blood can't deceive me," the youngster in the blue garment said, revealing a smile at the corner of his lips. "Interesting, interesting. One who could battle so fiercely with the 9-eyed beast wolf. Such a person is a worthy opponent. Ha ha ha. Even you as one of the 7 sons of the AO family feel the urge to battle?" The purple-clothed person laughed loudly. The youngster in the blue garment, AO Ginseng, revealed an arrogant expression and said, "What's so interesting about bullying the weak? If I battle, I'll battle geniuses. Only stepping on geniuses is pleasurable enough." Ha ha ha, Senior Brother Ginseng. The one I'm most impressed with amongst the 7 sons of the AO family is you. And that is precisely because you possess a strong cultivator's desire for battle, the purple-clothed person said. AO Ginseng smiled faintly, but the arrogance in his expression didn't disappear as he said, "Let's go. There's nothing left to see here." The two came quickly and left quickly. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han revealed a hostile expression. This guy was actually AO Feng's son. Chapter 329, Slaughter. Chapter 329. Slaughter. Reverie _ Ling Han had previously heard the title The 7 Sons of the AO Family, and now that he'd seen one, it was certainly a well-deserved reputation. AO Ginseng was at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and to be able to rise above hundreds of those with the same cultivation, his battle prowess had to have surpassed 9 stars. Ling Han never underestimated himself, but his battle prowess now was only at 9 stars at the spiritual ocean tier. Unless he used the demon birth sword, that is, then his battle prowess could certainly increase by a few stars. After all, it was a 10th tier spirit tool. But, using the demon birth sword in front of so many of the Wintermoon sect's people, not only would he be unable to get the thunder battle armor, he also would have the demon birth sword taken away, unless he hid inside the Black Tower. In any case, he definitely wouldn't get the thunder battle armor. This was contrary to his plans. Fortunately, he already obtained the 9-eyed beast wolf and digested the benefits. After compacting his last fundamentals, he would be able to charge into the spiritual ocean tier. Other people who wanted to charge into the spiritual ocean tier could only dream if they didn't have a few months' time. But for Ling Han, 1 to 2 hours was enough. Even Feng Yin used only less than 10 days' time. Could he be inferior to Feng Yin? Speaking of Feng Yin, this guy should have already returned to the Wintermoon sect, and with the Wintermoon sect's ability, they could probably get him a prosthetic. Would he also attend this exam? After all, not to mention other people, this thunder battle armor would move him as well. Ling Han nodded inwardly. He definitely had to break through to the spiritual ocean tier, or else, continually beating opponents at the spiritual ocean tier with the cultivation of the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier would inevitably cause suspicions. However, he first had to recover his power. Pa, with a thought, a piece of origin crystal instantly shattered and intense origin power surged out, surrounding Ling Han. Inside the Black Tower, Ling Han could do whatever he wanted. Instantly, origin power seeped into his skin, and after only a little processing from the spirit base, this origin power would be completely available for his use. This was why origin crystals could become the holy item of cultivating it was easily absorbed. Unfortunately, it required one's complete concentration to be refined, and couldn't be used during battle. Thus, speaking of recovering in battle, one had to rely on medicinal pills, but for cultivating, normally, origin crystals and medicinal pills worked both. One origin crystal needed a spiritual ocean tier warrior spending an entire month to refine it, so the origin power within was abundant enough that, after refining this piece of origin crystal, Ling Han's strength was entirely recovered. However, he lost quite a lot of blood. Even if he ate several hundred-year-old ginsengs, he couldn't immediately recover it all. His expression was somewhat pale, but under the disguise, it was hard to tell. He exited the Black Tower. The nine-eyed beast wolf was already in his pocket and wouldn't leave his grasp no matter how hard it struggled. He now had to find Qi Yongyi and the others. Although he didn't care about the yellow dragon fruit, he naturally wouldn't give up what should belong to him. Moreover, he wanted to relieve Qi Yongyi and the others, telling them that he was still alive. After he received the yellow dragon fruit, he would find an excuse to leave to charge into the spiritual ocean tier, and there should still be enough time for him to collect tokens. If he didn't even make it into top 100, then that would be really amusing. He walked towards the place which they agreed upon, and very soon arrived there. However, before he'd gotten close, he heard ping, ping, pang. Pang, they were sounds of weapons clashing and indistinct shouts of indignation. Could it be an internal conflict because of the yellow dragon fruit? Ling Han frowned and leapt upwards, appearing on top of a tree. Looking downwards, it looked practically like hell on earth. On the ground lay at least 10 corpses' severed heads, cut intestines, chests torn open, too horrible to look at. And these people were ones from the Rain Country with only a few still alive. They were now lingering with one last breath of life, being attacked from all sides by 7 people. They could die at any time. Ling Han's gaze swept by. Of those he knew, several had died, such as Li Dongyu, Xia Chongguang, Huang Weizhe. Those who weren't dead were Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tengyun, and a few others, riddled with scars and barely surviving by relying on their spirit tools. There were only 7 people in the other party, but 6 were in the late stage of the Gushing Spring tier, and one was even at the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. It was precisely because of his existence that Zhao Huan, Qian Wuyong, and Hu Fengyu, the 3 of the best, were completely suppressed, forming a one-sided slaughter. Jie, Zhou 1. You refused a toast only to drink a forfeit, so all of you go to hell. Zhang Yuan laughed coldly. He multitasked, not only suppressing the 3 in the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier, but also blocking those who sought to escape the battlefield. You guys will die a painful death, Qi Yongyi said with his teeth clenched as blood dripped down his eyes. Hemph, cursing belongs only to the weak. A useless groan. You guys aren't the first to be annihilated by me, and won't be the last. Zhang Yuan said coldly, without any pity. Ling Han's forefinger twitched, signaling that he harbored killing intent. I heard that in the Rain Country, there's a person called Ling Han who's very arrogant, daring to harm one of our sect's eldest chief's disciple? Zhang Yuan said like a cat toying with a mouse. In reality, there weren't many who died in his hands, but he achieved the essential result. Hmph, if Ling Han were here now, you guys would be cruelly killed, Zhao Huan yelled out. Ha ha, a bunch of frogs at the bottom of a well dare to speak conceited nonsense. What genius could come out of a mere small country of the desolate north? Zhao Yuan smiled haughtily. Sometime later, I'll go to the desolate north, murder that Ling Han or whatever, and carry his head back. Senior Borther Zhan is most imposing. Hee, maybe Elder Chief sure would be in good spirits and take Senior Brother Zhan as a disciple. Then we'd have to rely on Senior Brother Zhan's guidance and support. The other 6 bootlicked one after another. Zhao Yuan laughed aloud, appearing self-satisfied. Bullsh. Ling Han is already an Earth-grade alchemist. The Winter Moon Sect's Sect Master wouldn't dare touch him, let alone you. Besides, with Ling Han's strength, killing you is as easy as killing livestock. Qian Wuyong shouted sharply. Earth-grade alchemist? Zhang Yuan was startled momentarily, then burst into laughter. What a joke! An Earth-grade alchemy master could rise up from the tiny 9 nations of the desolate north. These country bumpkins were truly idiotic, dreaming right before their death. What's so funny? Let me have a laugh too. A cold voice sounded as Ling Han appeared on the field, both hands behind his back, his gaze baleful. Hu Yin, Qi Yongyi, and the others cried out one after another. First was exultation that this guy was actually alive after luring away the 9-eyed beast wolf, but then came worry, immediately leading to a change in their expressions. A mere youth at the first layer of the gushing spring tier couldn't do much. They were still destined to be slaughtered, weren't they? Not everyone was a freak like Ling Han. Oh, another one that has come to die? Zhang Yuan sneered, snapping his fingers. Junior brother too. Kill him? It was just a mere small fry at the first layer of the gushing spring tier. Yes. A youngster jumped out and revealed a vile smile. Remember, the one who killed you is called Yu Gangliang. A mere dreg. Stop with all the rubbish. Ling Han raised his legs, and with a paw, the kick hit the other's chest. Under the power's shock, that person was immediately sent flying, and as he floated in midair with a paw, his entire body imploded. Hiss. In an instant, the entire place was silent, and everyone involuntarily stopped what they were doing. Chapter 330, Completely Exterminated. Chapter 330, Completely Exterminated. Reverie _ Honestly, the one called Yu Gangliang was only in the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier, not very strong. But even if he wasn't that strong, the 7th layer of the gushing spring tier's battle prowess was enough to crush the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier by tenfold. However, he exploded from a kick. How was anyone supposed to accept this? This is called Wind God Kick. Ling Han randomly came up with a name. He didn't use his sword nor fists or palms only because he didn't want Qi Yongyi and the others to be suspicious of his identity. But how many gushing spring tier warriors like this were there? It was practically impossible not to be suspicious. Qi Yongyi and the others' eyes already lit up. See courting death. Zhang Yuan was infuriated and yelled, "Go all together and slaughter him! Slaughter him!" This was supposed to be their hunt, but one of them was killed. How could he not be infuriated? The remaining 5 charged at the same time. Their cultivation was higher than Su Ganglian's, and even if they couldn't annihilate Ling Han 5 against 1, it shouldn't be a problem to fight on par. However, they were up against Ling Han. Wind God Kick. Ling Han sprung out, pa, 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 throwing kicks continuously. Comprehension of one law meant comprehension of all other laws in martial arts. He already cultivated 7 flashes of sword chi on the sword's path, so as he flicked his legs, a flash of chi fired out, turning into a sharp sword and sweeping towards the 5 people. Every movement was a sword. His battle prowess now was enough to annihilate a normal opponent at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. So how could these 5 people rival him? Pa! His kick landed between the legs of one of them, and powerful chi rose upwards, turning into a sharp sword and tearing that person in half. Hualala! Intestines, heart, liver, and brains spilled everywhere in an extremely gruesome sight. Even Ling Han didn't expect that his kick would fire out sword chi, having such an effect. But this explained that he was somewhat accomplished on the sword's path, able to turn his body into a sword, forming swords in all ways. Pa, 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 pa. Ling Han threw 4 consecutive kicks, and 4 more corpses that were completely indistinguishable lay on the ground. Everyone felt chills. Those were 5 late-stage gushing spring tier experts, but they were almost all killed instantly at the same time. How could anyone believe it? Zhao Huan and the others thought, could this guy really be Ling Han? Although he looked completely different, there couldn't be so many freaks at the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier in the world. Ling Han looked balefully at Zhang Yuan and said, "Now it's your turn." Zhang Yuan instinctively felt a chill from Ling Han's gaze. Just what kind of gaze was it that could make him tremble from the bottom of his heart, as if his soul was frightened? He hurriedly encouraged himself. This was only a small fry in the first layer of the gushing spring Tyrol, though his battle prowess was somewhat nature-defying. But no matter what, it was impossible for it to reach all the way over the spiritual ocean tier threshold. Or else, wouldn't the martial arts tiers be just for looks? Daring to kill Winter Moon Sect's disciples, you're seeking your own death, he bellowed, initiating an attack. Those who murder will also be murdered by others. How can you guys be the exception? Ling Han threw another explosive kick. Pooh! The kick undoubtedly broke through Zhang Yuan's defense, landing fiercely on his face. Zhang Yuan instantly staggered backwards, but in a few steps, his head instantly exploded. The headless body swayed for a while, finally falling loudly onto the ground. Qi Yongyi and the others were already stupefied. Zhang Yuan and the other 6 killed from 100 till there were only 20 left. But once Ling Han attacked, he annihilated the 7 in a clean sweep. Just how great was the difference between the two parties? Ling, Master Ling? Zhao Huan asked tentatively. Ling Han glared at him and said, "What Master Ling? Where's my yellow dragon fruit? You guys couldn't possibly be thinking of swallowing up my share, right?" Zhao Huan hurriedly took out the yellow dragon fruit, handing over the entire stalk, and said, "Please receive it, sir." Seeing that Ling Han didn't admit his identity, he didn't dare to acknowledge him carelessly, could only address him respectfully. Ling Han took away half the yellow dragon fruits. With his contributions, even taking away 90% was reasonable. Moreover, he just saved these people and his martial arts abilities were laid bare. So even if he took all of them, Qi Yongyi and the others would only be able to nod. Meeting acquaintances, Ling Han naturally wouldn't take all the gains. Leaving them half, he said, "I'm taking half. You guys don't have any objections, right?" "No." They hurriedly shook their heads like rattled drums. Ling Han left half the yellow dragon fruits. The rest he stored inside the Black Tower. He was about to leave to charge towards the spiritual ocean tier, but frowned, turning to look to the left side. Xiao, 2 figures appeared almost at one step after the other. They were precisely Ao Jiancheng and the purple-clothed youngster. Interesting. Ao Jiancheng had both hands behind his back. His gaze swept past Zhao Huan, who hadn't stored the yellow dragon fruit, as he said, It's actually the yellow dragon fruit. No wonder it triggered a battle. Honestly, even I'm a bit moved." "What? Senior brother Jiancheng, this is our Sect's disciple." The purple-clothed youngster looked at the ground for a while. His gaze locked onto a sleevite had traces of blood on it, but a moon design could still be seen underneath. Ao Jiancheng immediately revealed killing intent and said threateningly, "You guys have such great nerve, daring to slaughter our Sect's disciples. Himph, they coveted our things and wanted to kill and rob us. So were we supposed to stretch our necks and await death?" Zhao Huan said, unwilling to give in. In the Rain Country, he was the prodigy of one of the 8 large noble families, but here he suffered threats on his life repeatedly. It was a truly great contrast. "The people are already dead, and you guys can say whatever you want," the purple-clothed youngster said coldly. "I can say that you guys killed and robbed this Sect's disciple, yet still try to put the blame on them. Put down the yellow dragon fruit and take your own life," he said haughtily. Qi Yongyi and the others were angered half to death. Could they be more unreasonable? When all is said, you guys simply set your eyes on the yellow dragon fruit. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "You guys go first. Leave this to me." "You?" Qi Yongyi and the others hesitated. "You guys still don't believe me?" Ling Han raised his eyebrows with soaring confidence. "Go." Qi Yongyi and the others originally suspected that he was Ling Han, and now they no longer doubted it, turning one after another to leave. Staying here, they would not only be unable to help Ling Han, but instead become a hindrance. "You talk quite big." The purple-yellowed youngster laughed grimly. A mere small fry at the first layer of the gushing spring tier dared to speak of blocking them? Where did he get such courage? He immediately leapt out, wanting to block Qi Yongyi and the others. Ling Han also moved, unleashing a metal sword. With a schwa, sword chi flew out. The purple-clothed youngster was forced to stop and reached to wipe the wound on his cheek slit open by sword chi. He couldn't help but be infuriated and said, "Damn it, you dare hurt me." "So what?" Ling Han said indifferently. "Die." The purple-clothed youngster dove out again, but this time, his target was Ling Han. As he stretched his arms and legs, martial intent flowed. His battle prowess was extremely shocking, at least 10 stars. Possessing battle prowess that surpassed one's tier by 3 stars in the spiritual ocean tier was very remarkable. Ling Han didn't dare to be careless. Ding, 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 ding. The long sword danced rapidly, sword chi surged through the sky, and four-season sword technique followed his will smoothly as he battled fiercely with the purple-clothed youngster. Chapter 331. Preparing to Break Through. Chapter 331. Preparing to Break Through. Reverie _ Ling Han was very freakish, but the 9th layer of the Gushing Spring tier was a shortcoming after all. His battle prowess could rival 9 stars in the spiritual ocean tier, but encountering the 10-starred purple-clothed youngster, he was still the side weaker by a level. Within a few moves, he was at a disadvantage, only guarding. However, this still stupefied Jian Ao Chung and the purple-clothed youngster. Since when could first layer of the Gushing Spring tiers be this ferocious? In Jian Ao Cheng's eyes, killing intent was burning. If such a freak raised his cultivation to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, wouldn't he be able to instantly kill him? No, such a prodigy had to be quickly eradicated. He liked to battle prodigies because the feeling of crushing prodigies was extremely pleasant, definitely not because he could lose. The purple-clothed youngster roared repeatedly, one move more vicious than the previous, but Ling Han's battle prowess was only weaker than him by 1 star. How could he possibly take Ling Han down by exerting a bit more strength? Besides, Ling Han still had too many trump cards that he hadn't revealed. If possible, Ling Han truly wanted to slaughter Ao Jiancheng. He should be one of Ao Feng's cherished children, and killing him would definitely make Ao Feng feel distressed for a while. However, Ling Han felt that a mental spirit always followed Ao Jiancheng. That formidable Winter Moon Sect's cultivator was paying close attention to Ao Jiancheng at every moment, and the instant Ling Han unleashed the Demon Birth Sword, it would definitely draw that person over. Ling Han shook his head. He could only contend relying on his own strength. "I underestimated you." The purple-clothed youngster stopped, but did not to stop the battle. He took out a sword behind his back that gleamed like autumn water. On the blade were lines of fabric patterns, totaling 9. It was a spirit tool. "Resuscitate," he shouted lightly. Wong, wong, wong. The lines of fabric on the blade were activated one by one, glowing. However, only 8 were lit up, the 9th line of fabric refusing to work. "Making me use long brow sword. You can feel proud even when you die." The purple-clothed youngster smiled with air of arrogance, leaping out with his sword and slashing towards Ling Han. Who? The spirit tool split apart the air and 4 flashes of sword chi danced all together, extremely scary. Ling Han frowned momentarily, then just turned to run without saying another word. If he wanted to beat the purple-clothed youngster, he had to use the Demon Birth Sword and the mysterious 3000. However, once the Demon Birth Sword was used, under the sensitivity of the chi, the divine sense on Ao Jiancheng would definitely realize. That couldn't happen. Once he charged into the spiritual ocean tier, his strength would have a shocking surge. Why was it necessary to fight desperately here? "You want to run?" The purple-clothed youngster snorted, hurriedly breaking into pursuit. Ao Jiancheng displayed his movement technique and followed behind. Ling Han was too freakish. If such a prodigy wasn't quickly eliminated, it simply would make him unable to rest or eat in peace. However, who would be able to catch up to Ling Han, who used Shadow Wine movement technique once he activated it? Hunyo was one, but for the spiritual ocean tier practitioners, one had to be naturally gifted with movement techniques or have related bloodline abilities. Otherwise, if they said they wanted to catch up to Ling Han, who used the Shadow Wind movement technique, they didn't really mean it. However, After running for a few minutes, the difference between the two was pulled apart by a whole lot. Ginseng took over the purple-clothed youngster, but the distance between them and Ling Han was still widening. After chasing for a few more minutes, Ginseng could only stop with disappointment, for Ling Han already disappeared from his field of vision. He couldn't help but harbor resentment. He should have personally attacked earlier, dealing Ling Han a fatal blow and giving him no chance to escape. But who would have thought that he who was in the first layer of the gushing spring tier not only had nature-defying battle prowess, but also speed that could make others gape. He hadn't witnessed Hunyo's speed, or else he'd definitely suffer a mental breakdown. Senior brother Ginseng, did you kill? The purple-clothed youngster arrived, and thought to ask Ginseng whether he'd killed Ling Han. But as soon as he spoke, he knew something was off. Ginseng's expression was quite unsightly. Humph! Ginseng's expression was full of killing intent. He swore he definitely wouldn't let Ling Han off the next time. After Ling Han ran for a while, his figure flashed and entered the Black Tower. It was time to break through. Once he stepped into the spiritual ocean tier, he'd sweep across the desolate lands. So what if there was someone in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? He couldn't destroy them without using the demon birth sword. The 9-eyed beast wolf was still alive, but heavily injured. It woke up and immediately bared its teeth, roaring angrily and revealing its viciousness. Still vicious? Ling Han hurled a slap, and the 9-eyed beast wolf was instantly shocked to death. He waved his hand, and the beast wolf's blood was completely extracted, adhering to his body. Several drops of blood were actually silver, as if mercury condensed into a ball. This was 9-eyed beast wolf's blood essence, and the sign of a king. There were only a few drops. Don't be bitter about the small amount. Only after reaching the shattering void tier would one's blood turn fully silver, and flinging one drop of it could kill someone in the flower blossom tier. Ling Han absorbed the essence, turning it into vigor that nourished his body. The blood was drying up at a rapid pace, turning into a scab stuck on his skin. The color of it was extremely light, as the essence within had all been absorbed. Ling Han felt like his body was going to burst. Absorbing the blood essence of a beast king at the spiritual ocean tier was greatly beneficial to him. However, this wasn't enough. Ling Han waved his hand again. The 9-eyed beast wolf instantly broke into parts, each bone separated, fluttering midair. One drop of white bone marrow immediately emerged from the bone. Blood and bone marrow were the 9-eyed beast wolf's true essence. Normally, the bones needed to be continuously boiled and simmered for at least a day and a night before the bone marrow could become soup. However, inside the Black Tower, there was no need for such trouble. Ling Han only had to raise his hand to do it. He opened his mouth. Shio, shio, shio. The bone marrow's essence instantly flew into his mouth and was swallowed by him. Wang, the 5 elements chaos lotus vibrated slightly as origin power flowed violently inside, sending the bone marrow's essence to every corner of his body and strengthening his bones and muscles. More spirit medicine. Ling Han waved his hand. Stalk after stalk of spirit medicine was pulled from the ground, lining up in front of him. He chose some spirit medicine that strengthened his physique and compacted his origin from the spirit medicines he harvested at the Devil Sky Mystery Realm and the Winter Moon Sect's medicinal garden. He pressed with his right hand, and the liquid medicinal essence was instantly extracted. Ling Han opened his mouth and swallowed like a whale. Hong. His entire being was like it turned into a pill furnace. Inside his body were several types of spirit medicine and the 9-eyed beast wolf's bone marrow and blood. He turned his body into a pill furnace, refining these essences and nourishing his body. He felt as if he would soon explode. It wasn't enough. It hadn't reached the limit, Ling Han thought to himself. He would break through at the instant his body reached the limit, compacting his fundamentals to an unshakable degree. Hong, hong, hong. Wave after wave of energy detonated inside Ling Han's body. His skin cracked and streams of blood poured out, but his eyes were still shining. He almost touched the door of the extreme. Pa, pa, pa. His skin continued to crack open. Even the rock cliff body couldn't tolerate the violent energy wreaking havoc inside his body. At this moment, Chapter 332, Two Spiritual Oceans. Chapter 332, Two Spiritual Oceans. Reverie Hong. Inside Ling Han's body, an earth-shaking change happened. His muscles, bones, and veins were becoming stronger, breaking through the rock cliff body's limits and bringing it up a level. This wasn't the indestructible Heaven Scrolls contribution, but a breakthrough acquired from him pushing his own body. Such a great change didn't occur on his body alone, but also in his Dantian. He had fused 9 nuclei long ago, and turned 9 Springs Eyes into the most important step in breaking through to the spiritual ocean tier. His Springs Eye was surprisingly large, as if a great lake, and now it was Super Springs Eye that was expanding at the rate of a tsunami. Forming an ocean, Hong Long, the Springs Eye burst out a surprising amount of origin power. If Ling Han used his divine sense turned into a human figure for comparison, the Springs Eye had already become a vast body of water, so extensive that the end couldn't be seen. Hiss! This could already rival the spiritual ocean in his previous life when he was at the peak of the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but now he just broke through, and the spiritual ocean was still expanding at a fast pace, far from reaching the early stage of the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Truly astounding. This process for Ling Han was following a beaten path. Tidal wave after tidal wave, the spiritual spring turned into an ocean, massive and boundless. After whole 3 hours, the spiritual ocean's expansion finally stopped. However, as Ling Han thought he'd smoothly advanced, a tide suddenly rose and the spiritual ocean transformed again, beginning to split. SHT, what's this situation? At Gushing Spring Tier, he only had 1 supersized Springs Eye, but others had 9. And now, others fused 9 springs into 1, turning into 1 spiritual ocean. Could he be the opposite, possessing 9 spiritual oceans? Fortunately, his spiritual ocean only split into 2, and no longer continued to divide. 2 spiritual oceans, one on top and the other on the bottom, as if heaven and earth. Moreover, 1 spiritual ocean swirled clockwise, while the other rotated counterclockwise, like the yin-yang fish in the diagram of cosmological scheme. Ling Han was driven mad. After crossing into the element-gathering tier in this lifetime, everything was different. Other people's origin nucleus was singular, but he had 5 small origin nuclei combined. Other people's 9 Springs Eye, while he had 1. Other people had 1 spiritual ocean, yet he had 2. Holy crap! However, the real change probably happened when he was at the 9th layer of the element-gathering tier when he fused 9 origin nuclei, which now emerged as an intrinsic change. After all, having small origin nuclei, it could be done as long as one had multi-element spirit base. 9 nuclei fused into 1. This was probably unprecedented, at least according to what Ling Han knew in 2 lifetimes. Another like this had yet to appear in the world, so his path of cultivation that followed might bring him many surprises. Very soon, the 2 spiritual oceans finished expanding, completely stabilizing, which meant that he truly crossed into the spiritual ocean tier. Ling Han was shocked, because his spiritual ocean now was 10 times as big as the one in his previous life. With a thought, the spiritual ocean raised in a wave as origin power swept past, surging violently. He casually threw a punch, sensing the power within. He nodded. His power could now rival the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. This was extremely scary. Just stepping into the spiritual ocean tier, his power could rival the late-stage spiritual ocean tier warriors. So when he reached the peak stage of the spiritual ocean tier, would it be possible for him to battle those in the spiritual pedestal tier? Relying on his own power, and not with the help of the demon birth sword. This was very much possible. Even though the higher the tier in martial arts, the larger each step, he compacted his foundation too sturdily, allowing him to possess extraordinary tier-surpassing battle abilities. This time, fighting Ao Ginseng again, I can beat him barehanded till he calls his ancestors. Ling Han smiled faintly. However, I still don't want to expose my identity. I have to infiltrate the Winter Moon Sect to find out Mother's whereabouts, so it's best not to use a sword. Fist techniques? Palm techniques? Or leg techniques? Ah, got one. It's Nalon 2's War Elephant Fist, the one I requested when he asked me to refine pills. It's said to be quite a special black-grade technique, which gushing spring tier martial artists can't cultivate as they're one tier too low to manifest martial intent. It'd be nice if this fist technique is like the mysterious 3000. However, Natu Lon didn't have a stinky face, as if his parents had died like the one-sword emperor had when he handed it over. I guess I'll be disappointed. Ling Han turned over the War Elephant Fist inside his consciousness, as he said, "Small tower, can the second layer be opened now?" The small tower's figure surfaced. It paused slightly, seeming to attempt it, and then it immediately swayed left to right as if it was shaking its head. "No, you're not strong enough right now. Hey, hey, hey. I am now in the spiritual ocean tier, and counting upwards, the spiritual pedestal, the flower blossom, the spiritual infant, the deity transformation, the heaven, and the shattering void tiers, a total of 6 more steps left. Even if I could open one layer every time I advanced, then when I become God, I can still only open up the 8th layer, meaning God Realm also has level differences." Ling Han inferred. This was counting closely. If, by any chance, he needed 2 or 3 tiers before he could open a layer of the Black Tower, then just how many stages was God tier divided into? Small Tower was silent. Its intellect was limited, or maybe it was because it was damaged too heavily, affecting its intelligence? At any rate, it was unable to respond to questions out of its range. Ling Han sighed. It made sense. Black Tower was undoubtedly a product of the God Realm, and its original owner definitely died, while the tool spirit was annihilated as well, rebirthing as another one. This explained that even gods were divided into the weak, and the strong dividing them into levels would naturally be normal. Interesting. So following this line of thought, alchemy doesn't end at the heaven tier. Ling Han revealed a smile. He was enthralled by alchemy in his previous life. In this life he focused on martial arts, but that didn't mean he no longer had interest in alchemy. He had already gone to the extremes in alchemy and could no longer advance any further. But in reality, alchemy was the same as martial arts. God tier was not the end. Perhaps it was close, but definitely not the end. He could explore alchemy again. This made Ling Han very happy, an excitement which he hadn't felt in a long time. Whatever, first he'd practice that fist technique. There wasn't much time. Inside the space of the Black Tower, he could use his abilities fully, grasping the slightest changes. This was clearly extremely helpful in practicing techniques. However, he wasn't in too much of a rush, either. Wanting to enter the top 100 in the exam, it wasn't that the more people he defeated, the better it was enough to defeat those who had enough gains. If you beat 10,000 people, you can only gain 10,000 tokens, but if you beat one person who has defeated 10,000 opponents, then you can reap 10,001 tokens. So, Winter Moon Sect's disciples actually weren't at all disadvantaged joining the exam on the 3rd day. Ling Han cultivated for an entire day, and after grasping the basics of the War Elephant Fist, he left the Black Tower. Now, it was time for him to fully display his capabilities. However, he disguised himself again because Qi Yongyi and the others should have seen through the earlier identity. Knowing his identity actually wasn't such a good thing for them. He shuttled through the mountains, gaining quite a lot. At nighttime, he raised a bonfire, grilling 9-eyed beast wolf's meat. Smells good. Really does smell good. A bunch of people rushed out from the forest. There were at least 200 people. Yo, Brother Zhao, it's a guy all on his own. These people looked at Ling Han as if Ling Han was a course on their table. Reverie _ Before the exam started, many wealthy individuals were acquiring tokens and underlings all around. While most people were all right after being rejected, they simply continued to search for the next person, since there were so many people here anyways. However, there were always those who thought that the world should circle around them. After being rejected, they'd show a scowl, or even threaten to kill and whatnot. This youngster was one of those people. His name was Zhao Ri. However, Ling Han disguised multiple times, so Zhao Ri naturally couldn't recognize Ling Han. Zhao Ri sniffed hard with his nose and set his eyes on the meat Ling Han was grilling, revealing a hungry look. "Brother Zhao, this seems to be extremely high-quality beast meat," an underling said to Zhao Ri. "Go get it for me," Zhao Ri said. High-level beast meat was greatly tonic, and for martial artists, it wasn't inferior to medicinal pills. One underling immediately came over and yelled at Ling Han, "Damn brat, hand over the token, and you can get lost." Ling Han frowned and said, "If you don't want to die, get lost." "Haha, can't you see we have so many people?" The underling laughed grimly. Their collective strength was certainly not weak. They not only could overwhelm foes with numbers, but also had several late-stage gushing spring tier experts. Running rampant on their path gave them a burst of confidence. "Hurry, this young master is hungry," Zhao Ri urged from behind. "Humph, you're going to regret refusing me." The underling immediately threw a kick at Ling Han with vicious force. This was not just kicking Ling Han acidite would kick his brains out. This exam didn't forbid them from killing, which seemed to have released many people's viciousness. Ling Han's gaze turned cold. Slashing by with a finger, a chilling sword chi came out of thin air, and fresh blood spattered. That person's leg was severed, flying in an arc and landing on the ground in front of Zhao Ri with a splat. Ah! At this moment the underling realized what had happened. After being startled, he screamed tragically as tears and snot muddled his face. Forgetting to bind up the wound, the bleeding alone might kill. Impudence! How dare you? Courting death. 100 people shouted angrily all together. Was there still order if a person on his own dared to act violently in front of them? Seems like you have some skill. Zhao Ri laughed coldly. Brother Zhang, Brother Li, and Brother Ma, which one of you is willing to take down this brat? He said to 3 youngsters with unordinary bearings. These 3 people were all in the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, and the haughtiness on their faces was soaring through the sky. In reality, descendants of large families aside, reaching the 9th layer of the gushing spring tiers under 30 in the North region was certainly very impressive and could be called the finest. After all, there were only so many prodigies that crossed into the spiritual ocean tier because of a fortuitous encounter, either eating a heavenly spirit fruit or taking a spirit pill passed down from ancient times. The youngster surnamed Zhang took large strides over with a smile and said, "Leave a nobody like this to me. It'll save Brother Li and Brother Ma from dirtying your hands." The other 2 laughed reservedly. The 3's strength was more or less the same, so they were all unconvinced about each other. Each one wanted to earn the first place, so they would take turns to display their abilities when encountering situations like this. "Brat, no need to tell me your name, and no need to tell me who's your backer. I don't care. Meeting me here is your greatest misfortune, so just blame your bad fate," the youngster surnamed Zhang said arrogantly, throwing a punch towards Ling Han. In order to display his abilities in front of Li and Ma, this punch was unleashed with all his might to kill Ling Han in a clean sweep. Whoever could take care of their opponent the fastest would obviously be stronger. Ling Han shook his head. Did these youngsters truly think they were the kings of the world, doing whatever they wanted? He snorted and threw a punch as well. War Elephant Fist activated, Wong, vein-like lines unfolded, and from inside came a light silver dragon elephant that emitted a great presence, trampling towards the youngster surnamed Zhang. Pooh! Pooh! Everyone spurted out at the same time. Martial intent. That was martial intent. Martial intent manifested mint, the spiritual ocean tier. Esset. T. Everyone's eyes suddenly popped out. Who would have thought an unprepossessing 18 to 19-year-old youngster was actually a spiritual ocean tier expert? Now they were done for, having kicked an iron plate. Pong! The dragon elephant ran over, and the youngster surnamed Zhang was no more, trampled into a pile of mud. Ling Han was amazed as it was his first time using the War Elephant Fist that hadn't known of its power. The result was, it crushed an opponent in the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier into crumbs. Moreover, he only cultivated this fist technique for a day and didn't truly grasp its essence. A true War Elephant Fist fired out should be golden, and not light silver. However, cultivating it for a day's time to this degree was not bad, either. Ling Han laughed. He wasn't overly critical of himself. He was a genius, but not a nature-defying genius. It was just that his luck was relatively better. Sir, Zhao Ri said whilst trembling. The spiritual ocean tier warriors absolutely crushed the gushing spring tier 17. If they had had 100 people here, it would not at all have been enough. Not to mention there were only a dozen of them in the gushing spring tier. Still want to eat meat? Ling Han laughed gently, but seeing him crush the youngster surnamed Zhang into meat paste with a single punch, who would still feel Ling Han gentle and amiable? The masses shook their heads all together, moving very orderly. Ling Han nodded and said, "Hand over your tokens. Everyone can get lost except for Zhao Ri." Everyone was as if they'd been granted amnesty. They hurriedly took out their tokens, placed them on the ground, and turned on their heels. If they lost the token, they could still rob more. But if their lives were gone, where would they find that? Zhao Ri clenched his teeth, suddenly breaking into a run. He didn't want to wait helplessly for death. As he turned around and stepped down with his right leg, he stepped on nothing as his entire person instantly fell towards the ground. It wasn't that a hole suddenly appeared on the ground or whatnot, but because his right leg had already been severed by sword chi, so he naturally stepped on nothing. "Ah!" he instantly shouted tragically, struggling to prop his body up. As he sought help from his underlings, none looked twice, simply walking away rapidly with their heads down and making him instantly feel an intense chill. "Don't kill me. I'm a clansman of the Zhao family. My father is Zhao Richeng, a formidable spiritual pedestal tier cultivator, and if he knew you killed me, he would definitely find you and kill you." Zhao Ri could only turn his head to threaten Ling Han. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "All right, I've remembered." He waved his hand and Pu. Zhao Ri's head was cut off and spun a few circles on the ground, his eyes still filled with regret. "My sword intent is too strong now. Clearly, when I throw a punch or a palm, it turns into sword chi. This way, even if I use War Elephant Fist, people would still guess that I actually use a sword. I need to adjust a bit," he muttered to himself. As for trash like Zhao Ri, he wouldn't care even if he killed 10,000 like him. He didn't know how many arrogant second generations like this he killed in his previous life. Chapter 334, Delivering Tokens. Chapter 334, Delivering Tokens. Reverie _ Ling Han walked through the mountains, walking along a narrow mountain path towards the Fallen Goose Valley. On the way, he encountered many battles, but he obviously quelled them easily with his strength. If his opponent showed killing intent, he wouldn't hesitate to kill them, but if the other party simply wanted to rob, then he would give them a way out. After all, contending over tokens was the rule of the game, and not personal grievance. Battle after battle, Ling Han finally suppressed his sword chi, forming fist chi once again. Comprehension of a rule led to comprehension of all rules. The world martial arts was originally from one source. Ling Han comprehended by analogy, thinking, "I encountered a bottleneck in my cultivation of sword chi. From the fifth flash, it has been no longer smooth." In reality, the fifth one appeared because father was captured and I broke through the shackles under fury. The sixth one was formed through a discussion of sword path with teacher Mo that led to enlightenment. The seventh one was also due to an explosion of emotions. But I can't always be accompanied by such overwhelming emotions, and I don't want to improve my sword intent through great sorrow since I can't always be so lucky that the people by my side are only ever injured and never die. Since I've encountered a bottleneck with cultivating sword chi, it wouldn't hurt to try other arts and skills. Training the fist technique for such a short time, I can indistinctly feel some sort of resonance with the sword path. Perhaps improving War Elephant Fist to the highest tier can let me form the 8th flash of sword chi. On the third day, Winter Moon Sect's disciples officially joined the exam. Not many, only 300 or so, but these people were all around 25 years old, and the weakest was in the gushing spring tier. This was very shocking, disrupting the exam again. Ling Han never met a rival and the tokens he gained reached 10,000. Yet the opponents he defeated were but 700 or so. As expected, robbing the right people brought more profits. This already guaranteed his entry into the top 100. Ling Han had no ambition to take the first place because there was no meaning in it, as the top 100 all could enter the second round's exam. The Fallen Goose Valley appeared. It was a natural death valley. Birds didn't fly past because there was often fiendish chi that surged upwards from the bottom that even flower blossom tier warriors feared. It was said the Winter Moon Sect once dispatched 3 spiritual infant tier cultivators to investigate, but only 2 came out and both died soon after. Ever since then, the Fallen Goose Valley became a restricted area that no one dared enter. Ling Han and other examinees naturally didn't have to enter the Fallen Goose Valley, simply gathering at the outer perimeter of the valley. After people arrived, they delivered their tokens and registered their identities. Brother, got a question. How many tokens did you get? After Ling Han walked into the safety area, a youngster 20 or so years old approached. Why should I tell you? Ling Han replied with a question. The truth is, of the ones that are coming here now, those in the top 100 have at least 900 tokens. So if you have less, why not sell the tokens to me? If you're way over that amount, why not share some with me? The youngster said, grinning widely. Ling Han laughed and said, not interested. Hey, we can discuss the price, don't go. The youngster caught up, but Ling Han still ignored him, making him shake his head and going back to wait for those that came later. Ling Han walked towards the token delivery point. At least a dozen people struck up a conversation to buy tokens from him, but he still ignored them. When he reached the end, a tall platform was placed here, and those who returned had to walk up to deliver their tokens. Besides that, on the platform was stuck a large white paper, and on it were 100 names, each name with a number behind it. Obviously, it showed those in the top 100 and their scores. Ling Han took a glance. As expected, the last place's score was in the 900s, but this person would definitely be eliminated because there was still half a day's time before the exam was over. There were still large amounts of people that hadn't returned, and there would definitely be many whose score broke through 1,000. He glanced but didn't find the names of the Zhaohuan and the other youngsters of the 9 nations of the desolate north. Perhaps they could advance into top 10,000, but getting into top 100 was too difficult unless their luck was especially good and they met pushovers all the time. Even if they didn't enter top 10,000, they still got plenty yellow dragon fruit, so this trip wasn't for nothing. He only discovered one familiar person, Sword of Justice by Ming, who now ranked second with a score of 11,008. This score might only rank 40 or 50 even lower, but as long as one had 10,000 tokens, one could enter top 100. What meaning would it have to have more? He's a smart one. Ling Han nodded. He walked up to deliver his tokens. When he waved his right hand, a large amount of tokens was piled up on the table, stunning the person responsible for counting. Who would have thought that an 18 to 19-year-old youngster was actually so fierce? Ling Han intentionally disguised himself as a bit older, or else a 17-year-old face would be even more shocking. Your score is 10,086 pieces. The people responsible for counting were 4 gushing spring tier warriors, so their speed was naturally fast. And on top of the platform sat a spiritual pedestal tier practitioner, looking like he was resting with eyes closed and not caring, but with such an expert sitting there, who dared to mess around? Name, age, birthplace, and cultivation, a disciple asked, holding a book in his hands that had several names written on it. He was responsible for recording the top 100 people's scores. Although the first round of exam wasn't over, those who broke through the score of 10,000 were guaranteed to enter top 100, the only question being what their rank would ultimately be. Ling Han said, Han Lin, 19 years old, Fuyun Mountain, the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Han Lin was Ling Han backwards. A 19-year-old spiritual ocean tier cultivator was still surprising, but being older by 2 years was a lot better. Fuyun Mountain was a small mountain in the north region that Ling Han had read about previously in a geographical record. He took it in passing, and because the vast lands experienced a great calamity in the past 9,000 years, many place names were changed. He couldn't rashly throw out a place name from his previous lifetime. The 4 disciples were all surprised. Although the score of over 10,000 tokens was impressive, it might have been partly luck, but being in the spiritual ocean tier was certainly surprising. Even the expert in the spiritual pedestal tier who was resting couldn't help but open his eyes to size up Ling Han, nodding his head. He said, "Youngster, not bad. Quite impressive." Ling Han didn't make himself look too old, because his life force was too vigorous. If he really disguised as a 24 or 25-year-old youth, old monsters at the flower blossom tier would see through it with a single glance. If they associated him with one of the great thieves, then he would be in a pretty pickle. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Thank you, senior, for your compliment." The spiritual pedestal tier expert gave him a friendly smile, not daring to be arrogant. A 19-years-old spiritual ocean tier cultivator was truly something surprising, and in days to come, Ling Han might become a flower blossom tier, or even a spiritual infant tier cultivator. Even if he couldn't be a friend of Ling Han, he definitely couldn't fall foul of him. "This is your new token, you mustn't lose it." A disciple handed over a heavy black token. On it, the two words Han Lin were carved. Facebook, Twitter, Google plus them. Chapter 335, The Seven Sons of Ao Family. Chapter 335, The Seven Sons of Ao Family. Reverie _ Ling Han's score now ranked 7th, which looked high for now, but when everything ended, it might drop down to 40th or 50th place. The top 10 scores were all very close, differing only by a few hundred, or even a dozen points. Clearly, these were smart people. Obtaining 10,000 tokens meant definitely entering top 100, so what did it matter whether the rank was a bit lower or a bit higher? The second round of the exam was the key, and it definitely checked one's power. They only had to give it their all on this stage. Ling Han walked onto a large rock and sat cross-legged. As his right fist trembled lightly, he envisioned the war elephant fist. Fist after fist circulated, and on his fists appeared indistinct luster of vein-like lines formed from martial intent. Being idle, he might as well train. How could he waste time? Humph! A mere small fry in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier dares to show off here. A sharp voice sounded near Ling Han's ear. Ling Han turned his head to see a lanky man looking at him with arms crossed. The fourth layer of the spiritual ocean tier was quite an impressive cultivation for his age. After all, the spiritual pedestal tier warriors under 30 years old were still unheard of in the North region. "Who do you think you are?" Ling Han said sullenly. He was disguised anyways, and under the condition of not revealing his trump card, he didn't want to tolerate anything one bit, acting completely arrogant and domineering. The youngster snorted and said, "This young master is Yin Jun." Oh! Ling Han suddenly realized. Yin Jun was originally ranked 7th and just happened to be pushed down by him, now ranking 8. However, there was no point to contend for rank in the first round and he ran over so early, so he shouldn't bother about ranking at all. "In the next examination, I'll beat the SHT of you," Yin Jun said coldly. He certainly didn't care for this round's ranking earlier, but Ling Han was just too young, making him extremely envious. Moreover, Ling Han was only in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and being pushed down by such a person made him feel even more uncomfortable inside. "Dumbass!" Ling Han sneered, paying him no more attention. Yin Jun's eyes shot out flames of fury, but he forcefully suppressed it. He simply snorted. Once the second examination began, he would definitely let Ling Han know the immensity of the world. The start of this feud was certainly baffling. Ling Han shook his head and continued to practice fist techniques. He now formed 3 flashes of fist chi, and if he broke through to form a 4th, his battle prowess would have a small but fundamental change. It was already getting dark, a little more than 4 hours before midnight. More and more people returned. Yang Chong, Si Qiming, Zhao Huan, Qi Yong Yethos that Ling Han were familiar with or knew the names of appeared one after another. He swept a glance and saw Zhao Huan and the others with joyful expressions. Looks like they had quite a good chance of squeezing into top 10,000. Ling Han's rank dropped all the way down as expected, and the first place already surged into a high point of 20,000. It was no other than Yang Chong. However, without a moment's time, he was pushed down, and the first place became Ao Feng Hang. He ought to be one of the 7 sons of Ao family, but it was unknown which this one was. Ling Han laughed. Ao Feng had too many illegitimate children himself, probably didn't remember them, let alone outsiders. Huh. His gaze focused. He saw a fatty in the crowd, likely 22 or 23 years old. He was very unfamiliar to him, but thanks to that round physique, Ling Han could be sure that this guy was Ma Duobao. His stature was quite the flaw. No matter how kick-ass the disguise pill, it still couldn't disguise him who was like a crane standing amongst chickens. Catch him. As expected, if Ling Han could discover Ma Duobao, so could Winter Moon Sect cultivators. Instantly, several spiritual pedestal tier warriors leapt out from obscure corners, snatching at Ma Duobao. Tan brother, hope to see you again. Ma Duobao immediately broke into a run and blinked in Ling Han's direction right before leaving. The distance was large, but Ling Han was certain that Ma Duobao had discovered him. Strange. Ling Han was shocked, because he didn't have a special stature, and on top of the disguise, how did Ma Duobao recognize him? Could it be that those who thieve had a special art of distinguishing people? In spite of Ma Duobao being fat, his movement techniques were extremely quick. He was swimming through the crowd like a fish, and even the spiritual pedestal tier pursuers didn't know how to begin arresting him. They went further and further, and in a short moment, Ma Duobao had already ran into the dense forest. Ling Han wasn't worried about that guy. His body was full of treasures, and even he couldn't see through his strength. Ma Duobao had enough ability to keep himself alive. After Hun Yo and Yin Tian Zhao, there was yet another beast. Rong Huan Xian had already become an old monster that shouldn't be counted. The rankings continued to renew. More and more of the top 10 were led by those surnamed Ao, and without mentioning, they were definitely the 7 sons of Ao family. This certainly explained the 7 people's strengths that were quite out of the ordinary, so many of them reached top 10, and none of them was 30 years old. From this point, Ao Feng's talent should also be exceptional, or else he couldn't possibly have fathered so many prodigies. It was no wonder the Yu family wanted to arrange a marriage with Ao family back then. When midnight came, the first round's exam ended. Even if there were people who hadn't returned, their score wouldn't be counted. Ling Han's ranking dropped into the 40s, ranking 42nd, while first place was Ao Xinglai, who attained a shocking score of 30,000. Top 100, those who received the black metal token. Follow me, a disciple said. Top 10,000, still tallying, everyone be patient, another disciple said. Ling Han got up and left the Falling Goose Valley, following everyone to a mountaintop called Rising Sword Peak. Yulong Mountains were too large, so even with over 20,000 people in the Winter Moon Sect, only 7 mountaintops were occupied. In terms of surface area, it was only 1,000th. However, these 7 mountaintops were abundant with spiritual qi, a holy ground for cultivation. Comparatively, Rising Sword Peak's spiritual qi quality ranked last. This was where the lowest level disciples lived. Ling Han and the others had not officially joined the Winter Moon Sect, so they could only live here temporarily. Amongst the top 100, Winter Moon Sect's disciples took 30 spots, so 2 factions were naturally formed. The first night, a fight almost broke out, but fortunately, with the spiritual pedestal tier warriors keeping watch, nothing big was stirred up in the end. Ling Han looked around. The 7 sons of Ao family all reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, quite out of the ordinary. Besides the 7, there were a few that showed extraordinary talent, not in the least inferior to that of the 7 sons of Ao family. However, who was stronger would have to be decided in tomorrow's examination. Perhaps, Winter Moon Sect's disciples were all unconvinced with each other, wanting to come out as the top 3 amongst themselves. This night was extremely unquiet. Silent conflict was turbulent. But the second day, the sun still rose as usual. Ling Han entered the Black Tower at midnight and refined the yellow dragon fruit into Return Spirit Fruit 1. He might as well not waste time. A spiritual pedestal tier expert appeared before long, urging everyone to wake up. Without letting them eat breakfast, he brought them to a large platform on the mountainside. White or paved these tiles here. Hardness was one of its distinguishing features. Even a spiritual pedestal tier warrior's full power attack wouldn't easily break them. It was most suitable for making a battleground. The true ranking battle was about to begin. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.